like to welcome all of you here to the Board of Commissioners meeting, and if you would rise and join me in the Pledge of Allegiance, I would appreciate it. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. First of all, let me introduce everybody. We've got Administrator Hitt on my far left, then Commissioner Huxley, then Commissioner Boyce, Council Huddle, and John Jesuit. So first of all, let's talk about the agenda, and I'm going to go first because there was a mistake in there. The actual letter that I had produced to go to Sutter Coast by accident did not get in there, so I am not only going to give you a copy of the letter, but also when we get to that point. I have one already. Is this for? Yeah, that's for. Thank you, Administrator Hitt. And also we'll put it up on the screen once we get to that point. So I would ask your indulgence in letting me put this letter out when the time comes. So that's my only amendment to the agenda. Are there any other amendments to the agenda?
That wouldn't be an amendment, it would just be a comment on that addition, because I had picked up that it was something was referred to in the agenda routing slip. It wasn't there, or I assumed it wasn't there. I did have a call from the gentleman from Sutter Coast in Crescent City, and basically, questioning, was there going to be anything that he should be here for today? I said, well, based on what I saw on the agenda, no. So just so you know, that's what I told him, based on what I saw on the agenda. So.
Any other amendments to the agenda?
Well, thank you, Madam Chair. I too made a mistake.
Well, I'm glad someone else has made a mistake.
So I can highlight it if you like, and we'll go together. But I had 3 agenda items that I got in on time on Thursday, left for Salem very early Friday morning. When I got back Sunday, I realized that none of them had been put on the agenda. So here is the first one, and it has to do with Commissioner Huxley's comments and gesture. So that just gives you the verification that I did get it in on time. The second was back to, if you would pass those out, I'd appreciate it. The second one's back to the Wild Horse fire abatement, and I'm going to keep applying the pressure there until someone gives me a good reason why it isn't a viable, possible solution for Curry County. I guess that goes to you. And so this was also turned in on time, but for whatever reason, did not get on the agenda. And so I want to put it, I will put it on the agenda down the road. The third one, the most important, is a letter to the new interim Rogue Siskiyou National Forest Supervisor, Scott Russell, for Curry County's position to be reinforced by the increased timber harvest. And so I'd like to put that back on the agenda.
This has got 2 pages to it.
Did you?
Did
you catch that?
No. Come again. I got it interrupted with this.
Okay.
I'll keep this.
Okay, yeah, do keep.
So I would like to put the Commissioner Huxley back on the agenda, the comments he made on December 7th, and I would also like to, if you're ready for one more handout, on the increased burned timber salvage due to the Checo Bar fire, to interim Rogue Siskiyou National Forest Supervisor, Scott Russell. So here, I'll send 2 your way.
Okay.
And this is also not put on the agenda, unbeknownst to me, until I got back in the office Sunday. So it's probably, I think goes without saying, the highest priority that we have right now, that and fire prevention for the future. So if I could entertain a motion to have that added, those 2 items added to the agenda.
Okay, so you're talking the timber harvest and what else?
Commissioner Huxley's comments on December 7th.
If I could, Madam Chair, so far I think you have, I saw 3 suggested amendments by Commissioner Boyce, one being to discuss Commissioner Huxley's comments, the second being to discuss Wild Horse Fire Brigade, and the last being to discuss a letter to the forest supervisor about timber harvest. You also wanted to put on something about the Sutter Coast Hospital Services. I think what would make sense, and then I think Carolyn Johnson's going to come up and ask for an exec session amendment to discuss real property transactions. But I think what you need to do is have a motion on each amendment, whether the board wants to. You can move the slate, I suppose, but you could also take each amendment separately.
Administrator Hitt.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Just one small, you already have on your agenda under Commissioner Update, under Commissioner Gold, the Sutter Coast issue.
Right.
As I understood your comment regarding the letter, it was just to add to that.
Right, and I had passed the letter out at
Right.
our last
Okay.
meeting, the actual
Okay.
letter. So
Okay.
it just inadvertently ended up the precursor to that got on there.
So then, and I would ask Commissioner Boyce clarification. I know you mentioned the Wild Horse Brigade. Was it your intention to amend the agenda to include that, or you were just commenting on that?
No, I removed that out. And
Okay.
thanks for the
So-
opportunity. Yes, I did.
Okay, I'm
So thanks for
sorry.
the opportunity to clarify that.
Okay, so what you're looking at is you're looking at the timber salvage. There's a letter here, apparently.
Yes,
And also Commissioner Huxley's comments.
yes.
Okay, so let's do those separately. So is there a motion to put on the agenda increased burned timber salvage harvest, the letter?
So moved, Madam Chair.
You know, I haven't had a chance to read this.
Well, you know, can we open it for discussion then, and then perhaps have a vote and action at the end of that discussion?
You mean right this instant? How about during commissioner comments?
Well, that's the end of the day, and that's after lunch. It needs to. It's the most important issue we have before us right now. So why would we not want to take a look at that? And I have a presentation too that'll probably take about.
Well, I'm
10
going to
minutes,
get
a little
back.
more.
Okay, I'm going to get back to the agenda amendments because we want to.
And we, Madam Chair, we need, with all due respect, we need to add this to the agenda as soon as possible, early.
I don't mind adding it to the agenda, but right now I don't want to
Will
put
you
it right this instant.
Will you second the motion then?
Okay, I'll second the motion. Where would you like it on the agenda? Maybe I should ask that.
In the interest that it might be an action item, I would make it 6C,
6C.
Madam Chair.
Okay. Okay, is there any further discussion on this item?
Thank you.
Call for the question?
Aye.
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 Okay, so that takes care of the timber harvest. Okay. Next, Commissioner Huxley's discriminatory comments.
Madam Chair, I'll move that we add that as agenda item, action item 6D.
6D. What action are we talking about? I don't.
There's a letter in there, or we can.
I don't see a letter.
We can direct staff. I can provide you with a letter that's a rough draft. We can direct staff to have a reprimand letter. There's a variety of ways we can go. Commissioner Huxley can still clarify his comments. He can also still apologize should he choose to do so. So let's just open it for discussion as an agenda item.
So you're talking about discussion? And I don't see, okay,
Well, then
9.
Well, the action
I would
would be-
suggest 9, if that's where you, if it's approved.
But wouldn't it be an action item to have staff write a
Well-
letter if that's the direction we decide to go?
Yes, that includes commission direction to staff under
Okay.
9. Yes.
So you would want to put it under discussion.
Discussion, board direction, or decision. So that's kind of a catch-all. I usually personally, when I'm putting the agenda together, I put it primarily for discussion by the board to give staff direction on a particular issue.
And that might put us after lunch, so I'm going to stay with my motion to put it under possible administrative actions.
Okay. I'll second that.
Thank you.
Any further discussion?
Yes, Commissioner Huxley wouldn't be able to vote on this, I presume, would need to recuse himself, because it's about his conduct. Is that correct?
Trying to think what kind of
Hard to
conflict he
stump
would
you.
have. Well, I mean, you're going to ask him to actually participate, so
He
why
can
wouldn't
participate in the discussion, but I don't think he should vote on whether we're going to have the agenda item.
Well,
I could be wrong, but I think that would be the appropriate direction.
It's just, you know, he's a member of the board, and I think he gets to have an opinion over whether his conduct is actionable, you know, as much as anyone, so.
Well, let's just say if it was about me, I would recuse myself. I think that would be the right thing to do. So we can go whatever route you're comfortable with, Madam Chair.
I don't have a problem with him voting on it. So, any further discussion on this issue?
No, ma'am.
Okay, call for the question.
Aye.
No.
Aye. Let's get it out in the open. And I don't know whether I would need an agenda item adjustment to put the letter as an action item.
Oh, I see. Okay, that's an interesting question. I would tend to think you probably should. Yeah, I hadn't really thought about that part of it.
Okay.
Yeah. Good catch there, Commissioner.
So do I have a motion to put the Sutter Coast letter as an action item?
So moved, Madam Chair.
A second?
So is that 6E?
That would be
B6E. Yeah.
E. So I'll second that. Any discussion?
No.
Okay, call for the question.
Aye.
No.
Aye. Okay, any further items for agenda amendments?
I had one item, Madam Chair.
Yes,
I'd like to
Carolyn Johnson.
Yes, Carolyn Johnson, Community Development Director. I'd like to ask that you add an item D to number 13 on your agenda under executive session to consider information regarding real property transactions.
Okay,
Could you repeat that, please?
This would be item D to consider information regarding real property transaction.
13D.
13D.
Right, and so that's going to be ORS 192-660, sub 2, and I don't think it is
E.
sub D, it's sub E.
No, it was E on 13E, I'm sorry, 13D, but it's sub E of 192-6602.
so you said E?
Yes.
Okay,
That's the statutory reference.
Right.
The agenda reference is item D under.
Right, I got
executive
that.
13D.
Okay, good.
Right.
okay, so do we have a motion to add that to the agenda under 13D?
So moved, Madam Chair.
A second?
Second.
Any further discussion? Call for the question.
Aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any further agenda amendments?
Just a question for Councilor Huddle. Did you have one, Councilor? Or not?
Thank you very much, Administrator Hitt. At your places is a contract with a fellow named Bruce Bischoff, a lawyer, and it's to consider retaining him to represent the board on labor negotiations, and that can be done as well as a number, I think, or letter F under 6F. And there's just a little bit of urgency because we're
There's
currently,
E is the Sutter letter.
Oh, you put that there.
yep,
Okay, but I thought that was D.
nope.
Nope.
That's E.
C is the Forest letter, D is Huxley comments, E is Sutter Coast letter, and F is now proposed to be consideration of a contract with Bruce Bischoff for labor negotiations. And there's some urgency to this because the negotiations are already starting, and you know, we need to get this person on board if the board wants to. So
We're going to get something done today. This is great.
Do I have a motion to put the letter? It was Bruce, what's his last name?
Bischoff.
It's actually a proposed agreement. Is that correct, Councilor?
Yeah, there's a AGRS at your places and also the proposed agreement and an order.
Right. Order.
So do I have a motion to add this to the agenda?
Motion to add the
Bruce
proposed
Bischoff.
agreement for SEIU negotiations with
Yes.
Bruce Bischoff.
I think it's both SEIU and Teamsters.
And Teamsters.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
Second.
Any discussion? Call for the question?
Aye.
Aye. Okay, do I have a motion? Do we have any other agenda amendments? Do I have a motion to approve the agenda as amended?
So moved, Madam Chair.
Do I have a second?
Second?
Any discussion? Call for the
Aye.
question?
Aye.
Aye. Okay, so moving on to public comments. Let me just say one thing. Public comments need to be 3 minutes or less. We consider or hope that people will be, no, we expect that they will be respectful and polite and non-repetitive. So, Carl King, you're number 1.
Carl King, Nasika Road. Starting in 2016, I've been working with the county on public access programming on charter, starting with the task force that was appointed by the board at that time that was implemented as far as getting channel 182 up and running, fully equipped. The next phase of the task force report was to activate channel 181 for public access. You were doing only your governmental programming on this channel that we're all watching today. And I worked with Mr. Huddle and others, and we had discussions before the board as to a process of moving forward with that, whereby a nonprofit foundation of the Rotary Club here in Gold Beach would operate Curry County Voices, and we would provide the funding to train members of the community and students to develop programming, and we would then provide the scheduling for that through a contract with Brant Media. The problem has been that Charter has not been very responsive at all, let alone positively responsive towards that concept. And my funding is about to expire, frankly. I have over $7,000 of grants, either in hand or promised, to take care of this. And I will lose them if we don't get going very, very quickly. So I would ask you to at least give Mr. Huddle the nod and Mr. Hitt the nod to resume those discussions on a slightly different basis. And that slightly different basis would be, you would still use the restrictive PEG funds that you have in your bank account to purchase the necessary cameras and equipment. We would have a temporary permit on channel 182, your existing channel, and we would pay the full cost of Brant Media dealing with that channel, except for their cost of sitting in the closet here and doing your meetings. But if we got that going in March, I think we could keep on track. I have kids down at Brookings Harbor High School who are raring to go to learn how to do TV programs. They're doing radio interviews now, and they'd love to do this. I have talked to the local health providers. They have an interest in it, and we could really do something that's positive, but we really need to start. And again, I would hope that you would give Mr. Huddle and Mr. Hitt the go-ahead to at least move this forward, to bring it back to you, hopefully before the end of March, so that we can know whether we're going forward or not, so that I can gear up and go. Thank you.
Thank you. I don't know whether
Carl?
we need to, go ahead, Commissioner Boyce.
No, I just forgot to wait. Go ahead. I'll wait my turn.
Well, I don't know whether we need to have a formal motion to do this, but we could give Council Huddle and Administrator Hitt the go-ahead to pursue this.
That's all,
Council Huddle?
So just scheduling wise, I won't be here next week. The next board meeting in March is the 21st. So next week is a workup for that. And so to get something done by the end of March, I could possibly kick this over to Assistant County Counsel Shayla Kudlak, but even then to have her do something by agenda prep time next week is pretty ambitious. So I think the request to be done by the end of March, I'd request at least to push it out to the first meeting in April. I'm sorry. But unless the board wants to have a special meeting on the 28th in March, but again, I personally can't commit to getting anything to the board by the 21st.
That works.
That would work
We
with
can-
your
we can do
schedule?
that.
Which works,
yeah.
the 4th of April, you think?
Yeah, the April,
All right.
again, it's, my goal is to be training people this summer, producing programming, and as of the second quarter of the fiscal year, assuming responsibility. And where Brant Media is now finding fill-in programming all over the state to meet your requirements to keep your channel, we would undertake to provide that locally, initially only with government and schools, education programming, with the thought that eventually we'll open it up to members of the community and other interested groups.
Well,
Thank
I
you.
do know that the school kids are real excited about doing this type of thing, so I certainly would support it. I don't know. Commissioner Huxley?
With the changes, and I'm going to put this back to Council Huddle, we're getting into mixing the two things together, which and again, we didn't create, Charter has created the issues, not Carl King, not Curry County, not Brant Media, as far as a separate channel. Again, once we've discussed this in the past, once we start mixing the two, I'm telling you, there's no going back once you've crossed, in my opinion, once you've crossed that line. So
And
take it
Mr.
real gently.
Commissioner, we are intending to leave that public end of it out. We would go to government agencies, either of the county or of special districts, and produce programming for them to put on. And we would go into the schools, the 3 school systems in the county, and do programming for the schools.
So why is Charter or Spectrum now being so resistant to this idea?
They've raised, as I understand it, some technical issues as to the ability of their wires and circuits to handle the second channel that they're obligated to provide to you in certain circumstances.
So they're obligated.
Well, that's the way I read the franchise agreement, and who knows? But the key here is to get started, because in 2019 they're going to be knocking on your door to renew and extend their charter, and I think franchise, and they may be a little more conducive to making this happen as it should happen a year from now, and we just need to get started. I won't have funding a year from now to do anything.
So what you're proposing is that you get started on the training, et cetera, and the actual programming.
We would
When would that
We would
take
generate
place?
programming, but it would be government programming, it would be education programming. It would not be, for example, allowing the state of Jefferson to hand us a program and putting it on, which is what we would ultimately do if we had a separate channel.
Commissioner Boyce?
Council Huddle had something, and then I wonder if Charles might want to address the board with, is that something you were thinking on this?
You want?
Okay, no, that would be my preference.
Did you have some thoughts on this?
Just in terms of the legality, Charles Douglas from Brand Media, just in terms of the legality, Channel 9 for that network to our east that will remain unnamed started as a partnership between the city there and the university and what was then the Independent Hospital District. And it started precisely as a hybrid EG channel, an education and government channel. It later expanded to doing public access only 1 or 2 weekdays a week, and then when they got extra channels, they divided out those functions to where public access lived on its own channel, government lived on another channel, and education lived on a third channel. So you can kind of mix and match your channel lineups with the types of content, and you can even divide it out by days of the week and which functions exist on which days of the week. But as Mr. King just stated, we are meeting your franchise agreement obligations with Charter Cable in order to justify the establishment of a second channel. So under your franchise agreement, as soon as the county sends a letter to Charter saying, hey, in our last 12-week period, we have established that 70% of the content between 11 a.m. and 11 p.m. is only repeated up to 3 times, that means that they are then obligated under your franchise agreement to establish that second channel. The sticking point right now is that Charter is trying to imply that the county is on the hook to buy the transmission equipment for that second channel, which would fairly well wipe out the PEG funds you have, which of course can only be spent on capital equipment, either for this room or for education and public access studio and field equipment. So that's kind of the sticking point right now, and that's where your county council or your assistant county council would have to negotiate with Charter Cable, and that's where it starts getting enmeshed in your franchise renewal process. So that's the only input we had at this time. Thank you.
Okay, thank you.
Thanks, Charles.
Commissioner Boyce, did you have some comments?
My question just got answered. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Okay, so do we have consensus to have Council Huddle move forward with this and also Administrator Hitt?
Affirmative here, Madam Chair.
I'm fine with it.
Okay.
Okay, so we have consensus on that. Let's move on to the next public comment. Dave Barnes.
Morning, Madam Chair. I'd like to reserve my comment for later for the, it wasn't on the agenda when I filled out my card, but for the discussion on Commissioner Huxley's conduct.
That's fine.
Thank you.
Lauren Paulson.
Good morning. My name is Lauren Paulson. I'm originally from Portland, Oregon, and I moved here 5 years ago. What I'm about to tell you should intrigue you, and it should dismay you. Let me be brief. I'm very mindful of the schedule of the commission, and I'll try to do my best to keep this short. I am a criminal trespasser, according to Curry County. I'll get to why in just a minute. When I moved here 5 years ago, I rented an apartment behind Grocery Discount, grocery outlet. A few days later, I'm walking on Chapman Road, and a homeowner asked me what I was doing. And I looked to both signs to make sure I was on a public road, which I was. And I told him that I'm not doing anything. He told me that I better skedaddle. I just happened to remember that word. Some months later, I was riding my bicycle on the road right behind Orca. There's a mobile home, travel trailer, manufactured home park right there. And I had been there before because I was thinking about buying one of those small homes from Portside up on that shelf. So that's where I was riding my bicycle. I sort of knew where I was. A very large, husky, bearded man asked me what I was doing. And I was admittedly riding my bicycle through their property. I sensed danger. I started heading behind Smart Grocery that's now abandoned. There's a road behind their facility there. The man got in his car, drove over to where I was riding my bicycle, and tried to force me off the road with the car. That's using a car as a weapon. I'm in my bicycle, he's in his car, and he's basically letting me know that I was not welcome there. It gets worse. About a year ago, I was walking southbound. Once again, I live over by a grocery outlet store, and I was walking on Highway 101 northbound on the shoulder where the fog line is. And a car went behind me and honked at me. And I'm in a crosswalk, and admittedly to the car, I was right on a thin line between the crosswalk and not being in the crosswalk. And the car went beyond. I later learned it was Logan Couch, which some of you may know. He owned a security outfit, and he stopped and blocked my walking to Grocery Outlet where I was going to shop.
Mr. Paulson?
Yes.
Your 3 minutes are up. Can you wind this up really quick?
I can.
Okay.
Happily, I have a handout.
Okay, that's good.
So, to the point, I have been cited by Curry County for criminal trespass on beachfront end. What I was doing there was the styrofoam was flying towards the beach from their renovation project, and I got some pieces and I took it to their front desk and told them what was happening. A week later, I went back to see if they were doing anything about it, and they were not. There was more styrofoam from their project going in the wind out to the ocean. So I called Oregon's DEQ, and they have a file on this, and here's the bottom line. I went back a week later to see if there was, now this is my third trip there, to see if it was continuing. And this is when they accosted me, and I won't go into detail because it's a pending matter, but they let me know that I was on their property and not welcome. So here's the handout. Here's the good news. And with this, I will wind up. I'm a Swede. In Sweden, they have a tradition that you can walk on other people's property,
You need to talk into the microphone.
and they cannot bar you. And I have that handout for you that describes the program.
Okay, thank you. Okay, that's the end of public comments. There are no presentation. Oh, consent calendar. Consent calendar. There's only one thing on the consent calendar. It's Victims of Crime Act, BOC, Support Services and Training application. So do we have a motion to accept the consent calendar as presented?
Chair, I would motion to approve the consent calendar as presented.
Do we have a second?
Second. Thank you, Ms. Mather.
Any discussion? Hearing no discussion, call for the question.
Aye.
Aye.
Aye. How do you say aye in Swedish? Thanks, Lauren. You're a Vietnam vet, correct?
Okay, moving on. Administrative actions. First of all, to appoint a county budget officer. Louise, do you want to talk to that?
Louise Kallstrom, County Accountant. There has been a little bit of discussion about the budget officer, and I guess for one thing, I really wanted it clarified who the budget officer is in the county, because I think that maybe the board thinks that it's perhaps Administrator Hitt. And first, then I had a meeting with actually some emails from our auditors, and they want to know who the appointed budget officer is, and they need to have that information. In my job description, it says that as number, oh gosh. Anyway, in my job description, it says that I am the designated budget officer. In the job description and the order for county administrator, it says that he is responsible for the preparation and recommendation of the annual budget, and it also says he may subdelegate his authority. And so anyway, I would like for the clarification for the auditors and the county to actually officially be appointed the budget officer, as much as I love doing that job.
Okay, I would think we need a motion to approve Louise Kallstrom as the budget officer. Do I have a motion for that?
Also move.
Do we have a second?
Second.
Is there any discussion? Call for the question?
Aye.
Aye.
Aye. You're officially appointed.
Welcome
therefore.
back.
Thank you very much.
Madam Chair.
Commissioner Boyce?
Thank you. I might have been out of order a minute ago. I was conversing with Lauren Paulson. I just wanted to recognize that he is a Vietnam veteran, and also just related to his service, and he had a very, very close friend that we believe passed from the smoke from the Chetco Bar fire, and that's just one of many stories that you're probably familiar with. And you also were adversely affected by that smoke greatly. I remember meeting you a year ago, and you have come back in your health, and I just want to extend appreciation, and I hope that we can, you know, the folks in New York that breathed all the smoke, they were compensated, and they were honorably and rightfully taken care of, and we still don't know what the residual is in Curry County, and we'll be learning for years, so thank you very much. And thanks for letting me be out of order slightly there, Madam Chair.
Okay, moving on. Minutes submitted for discussion and approval. Interim Administrator John Hitt.
Thank you, Madam Chair and Commissioners. You have in your packet a variety of things under this agenda item. One is the Oregon Attorney General Public Meetings Manual, brief or a section, a portion of that relating to minutes. Attorney General's a sample of minutes from another organization, the archivist rule on minutes retention, and then 3 draft minutes for approval, a shorter or more abbreviated form of minutes from July 5th that you typically have, I guess, looked at or approved in the past, and then somewhat longer minutes from October 18th and also November 1st. And before I left, I had a brief meeting with Councilor Huddle and Brenda Starbird and John Jesuit, basically wanting them to kind of focus on the whole issue because we're well behind in getting minutes approved, of working on that issue, and then particularly now that I'm back, of getting a better handle, I guess, for want of a better term, on the level of detail the Commission would like to see in their minutes. Ultimately, minutes are the product of the governing board. So the governing board has the final authority as to, providing we meet the basics of the law, has the final authority as to how detailed or particular the minutes are. In my own experience, for like a 2-hour meeting or 3-hour meeting, minutes would normally be 5, 6, 7 pages, somewhere that length, sometimes less. Our minutes, I think, and John Jesuit, correct me, we're probably, most of our meetings, of course they tend to be somewhat longer, we're probably mostly at what, 12, 13, 15, 16 pages, okay? And I also want to give an opportunity for John Jesuit to come in, as well as John Huddle, and appreciate, of course, their work and effort. I think we have a little bit more support now for helping to get some of these minutes caught up, but that's one of my primary goals to get done here over the course of the next month or two.
John Jesuit, did you have any comment?
Commissioner Gold, the minutes, as cited in the packet with the from the ORS and the sample minutes, I would like to get that short form approved versus a narrative form, versus a more narrative form.
And just to let you know, I am all for brevity and getting things done legally, but yet in a succinct manner. And I've been on many boards and having things done word by word is just, I think, wasting a lot of time. So, plus we have the videos that people can refer back to if they want more detailed descriptions of what's going on. Council Huddle, do you have any comments?
Yes, Madam Chair. So the minutes have been, an issue for at least a couple years and probably longer. And the reason they're put on this meeting were, yes, we have a backlog of minutes to be adopted and approved. But what happened was, and you saw Louise Kallstrom come here earlier for the appointment of the budget officer, that was as a result of the audit. The auditors also pointed out that we need to have our minutes approved and adopted. That's one of the things they look for to show that decisions are being authorized in the proper manner and those kind of things. And so the interesting part is that we have new auditors. So it was also a comment from the past auditors. So minutes has been a focus of not just John Hitt, not just John Jesuit, but the board. And we have had some study sessions, and there were 3 sets of minutes proposed about perhaps a year ago, and the board gave some direction, and my understanding is that's the type of minutes that John Jesuit is putting out now, which I think, based on comparing them to the materials from the Attorney General's packet, the Public Meetings Record Manual that's in your packet on page 44, our minutes are technically longer, and I think, as John Jesuit said, they're more like a narrative and a borderline transcript. Not quite the transcript, but they contain a lot of information. Here's, just for the record and just to refresh your recollections, this is from the Oregon Attorney General Public Record and Meeting Manual of what minutes must have. It says they shall include at least the following. So if we include more, that's not illegal, but we must have the following: the members present, and that means the members of the board, the motions, proposals, resolutions, orders, ordinances, and measures proposed and their disposition, results of all votes, so except for public bodies of more than 25, the vote of each member by name, and then the substance of any discussion on the matter. And that's the part where usually you have the, we'll just call it the room for expansion or contraction. That's where you have room to make progress, I think, on our minutes, and that's what I think staff is saying, John Jesuit, and myself as well, that our minutes are just too long in content. And then it says, and what that means is it takes staff time to do them, and then we get backlogged on approving them, and then we get the auditor comments. And then subject to the public record law exemptions, a reference to documents discussed at the meeting. And then that's really that. And then Commissioner Gold, you mentioned that, well, we have recordings now. The next page would show the record retention. Well, it's actually on page 47. The minutes are permanent, but the audio-visual recordings are just a year. So the audio-visual recordings by the Secretary of State's retention records won't satisfy the minutes requirement. So we do need the minutes. They're permanent retained. And then if you look on page 45 and 46 of the packet, there's a sample from the Attorney General Public Records Manual that shows a sample minutes that is basically a page and a half from a 1987 Dungeness crab meeting.
Marine biology.
Yep, but anyway, and it just kind of goes down. It gives the date, and it gives the who's present, and then it talks about the subjects, and then it goes down and categorizes those subjects subject by subject and who spoke and what the minutes were. Now, for my sense, they list of what the subjects are, and then they talk about them, but they didn't kind of summary out each topic what they were talking about. They could have had a little more detail, but again, they reflect the bare minimum, page and a half. Ours, I think what we heard is a dozen, 2 dozen, maybe 2 dozen is an exaggeration, but we're getting up in the tens of pages of minutes, and that's probably excessive. But also our meetings last for a while as well. So again, there can be a lot of things done there, but really that's all I had. And it's because the statutes set out the minimums, and because we can exceed the minimums, in particular with the substance of any discussion on the matter is, I think, where one of our issues are. Also, perhaps format. That's why staff's looking for board approval of the minutes submitted, and then to get some of our backlog taken care of, and then direction going forward is whether this form of minutes, which probably has all the content that's required by the statutes and then some, if there's a format going forward, and you've heard from staff that we prefer a shorter, less narrative version, that we act on something like that. So that's what we're looking for: approval of these minutes, or corrections to them, of course. That's the board's choice every time you have a minutes to be approved, is to correct them, to fix typos or erroneous statements. But otherwise, really, I think staff's consensus is that our minutes are just too long, and we'd like direction from the board as to how to shorten them and whatnot. And I don't know, John, is that a summary of what you're...
Yes,
also, by the way, we have been trying to outreach to a volunteer to help us with the backlog of the minutes. So we're trying, staff is trying to address this. It's just such a, it's a large volume of backlog, and so it's a lot of work to do with a busy staff. And it's kind of just, I think our current staff is probably doing a better job working on the minutes than past staff, but at the same time, minutes from the staff since I've been here and probably before get pushed to lower priorities because of other more urgent work that we have to do. So, not trying to make excuses, I think that's just how we got to be where we are.
So question, what is the minimum amount that we have to do to become in compliance with our audit at this point in time?
The word I have from the auditors is they would like the most recent minutes done first. I don't know, Louise actually talked to them. I heard her clear her throat. She probably can tell you a little bit more about it.
Louise, can you answer that question, please?
Louise Colstrom, County Accountant. I don't know, I didn't get here in time to hear everything Council Hall said about our meeting with the auditors regarding the minutes. My first information from them was that we needed July 2016 through, I believe they said December 2017, for them to look at. And if we didn't have them, they would hire somebody to transcript them for us so that they could have them.
But they would charge us for that?
And they would charge us for that.
Oh, thank you. Just want to clarify that.
Yes.
That was not
So,
generous.
or we could get them done ourselves and get them to them before the end of our final audit. During our discussion with them, when we did an exit interview, Council Huddle and I spoke with them, and they said that they would allow us to talk to them about any financial impacts of board action for that period of time. And so we discussed anything that had happened during that year and a half that had any kind of fiscal impact. And they were satisfied with that, but we will still get an audit comment for not having minutes. And there's nothing I can do about this year's audit, but when we do the audit for this 17-18 year, what we have to not get the audit comment and not get the problems that we've had with the auditors regarding our minutes, we need July 2017 onward.
Okay.
That's this fiscal year, July 2017. They just need to be caught up, and that's what I think is the minimum requirement for getting minutes done that's going to affect our audit comments.
Commissioner Boyce?
Yeah, the first comment you had, Madam Chair, I think I agree with 100%. And so with two commissioners, I'm not sure where Commissioner Huxley is, but there's a double standard here, because at the Capitol, and I presume, and I think it's easy to verify, that within the Attorney General's office, they have nothing in writing. And so, and that's just because in the Capitol, it's a sheer cost that's associated with recording those. They have everything just like we have here, I believe, through Brand Media. Correct me if I'm wrong. We have everything properly archived. We have backups. And so my position would be tell the auditors they're welcome to review on their time, which, by the way, they're on state payroll. They can review the articles.
They are not on state payroll.
that's our-
They're
We're
independent auditors, and they will not review on
apologies,
their own
Madam Chair.
time, sorry.
Well, it's just something we can't afford, in my view. It's just.
But all they need
it's a
is
major
the-
requirement that just is not justified, and I think you agree with me there, and I don't know how to.
They're no longer telling us that we have to have those past minutes done. We're going to get an audit comment for not having them done. However, in order to avoid that in the future, we need at least July of this year and this current year caught up and continue to be caught up. We don't have to do any past, which is a huge amount of money to do.
So
But-
the requirements moving forward then from the timeline you're suggesting, can we not do just 1 or 2 pages?
Well, I
And
think
if
that
they
depends
have
on
issues-
the meeting. I don't, you
we
have to
have-
have all the motions and so forth. You have to
Well,
have the basics.
Business, yeah.
Yeah,
It has nothing to do with the number of pages.
And that's state law.
Yes.
And I'm looking at page 47 here. Okay. I'm going to stick.
My understanding is that what Council Huddle said of the minimum requirements to put in written minutes that the commissioners sign and are kept in a file, a written file, that's what was required by record retention. It just has to be the minimum, and then we would still have our videos and everything for our own information about they might say that you could only need to keep those for a year, but I would keep them for quite a lot longer than that because of
Definitely.
references of going back at looking at minutes, and then you can still have that video reference.
Well, and I think it's important to note that John Jesuit on his minutes puts the time that each item occurred, so that anybody wanting to go back in those minutes and wanting to look at more detail could go into the video and look at it. So right now, I'm looking for a motion to, yes,
May I
Commissioner
make some
Huxley.
comments? I've sort of been.
Sure.
Okay. The back and forth on the video, the video has to be retained at least a year after completion of the minutes. Okay. That hasn't been mentioned. So don't think that it's just a year after completion of the minutes. And that's on the books now. I have a lot of documentation, and I'm going to refer back to, because this was a surprise to me on this meeting today, especially to see the November 1st, 2017, because Interim Administrator Hitt, I emailed on November 30th of 2017, a week after receiving the minutes, marked them up, and did not put my comments in writing intentionally. We had considerable
We did.
conversation there.
We did.
We've had multiple conversations on the topic after that.
We have.
I had fortuitously conversation with county council just last week on the same topic of minutes. After the notes a year or a year and a half ago, I met with Accountant Kallstrom, and we talked about the prior auditor and their comments, and the fact that that came up. I took hours and created documentation, minutes by minutes, meeting by meeting, and have had extensive documentation, presented it to who then, this was pre-interim county administrator Hitt, to county council, who was overseeing the office, the Board of Commissioner office, and showed that to meet the minimum requirements of the auditors back then, there were well over 100 minutes 100 meetings that didn't have minutes. And I said, this was detailed documentation that county council was provided. There was no inclination at that time to do anything. Okay? Nothing was done. Those lists still exist. To fast forward, we're doing the same thing at this point, and it wasn't just a November 1st. Another meeting that's on the same for approval is one other discussion that we've had in our administrator.
Madam Chair, I need to know what the point of Commissioner Huxley is here.
I think he has the floor right now.
So what's the point? How are we going to solve it?
Go ahead.
So, again, surprised at both because effectively little to nothing was changed on those documents. So they weren't acceptable to you when we reviewed it then, and yet they're acceptable now, apparently, which is baffling to me. Okay.
Would you do?
So, and I'm certainly going to provide the auditors on the history that we have had, because there have been some that have tried to do this as far as what's actually occurred, because I'm not pleased with the fact that these were put on again short notice. I saw them, over the weekend, and it was like, wow. So those are my comments.
Okay. Administrator Hitt?
Thank you, Madam Chair. Well, Commissioner Huxley, you make very good points, and I would have to somewhat apologize for the October 18th and November 1st, because you're correct. You and I did talk, and I agreed with you, and I still do agree with you, that I'm not satisfied with either one of the flow and the content of either one of those 2 minutes. I think I am satisfied with the July 5th. Of course, I wasn't here then, so, but just reading them, I thought they looked fine. So these were, I didn't have a chance to review this myself before it went out, and that's not a criticism or on anybody. I just did not review them. I didn't look at them before they came to you. I thought, Commissioner Huxley, would again do apologies to you. I thought they had been reviewed and revised. That apparently didn't happen again, and that's not a negative comment about anybody, except maybe myself. So what I would like to propose, and if I may, Madam Chair, is to withdraw from your consideration the 1018 and 11-1, but if you find particularly the shorter form of doing minutes of July 5th satisfactory, then I think we can fairly quickly boil down and correct some of the deficiencies fairly quickly of the October 18th, November 1st, 17 minutes, as well as probably some other ones, so that again, with the goal of, as Louise Kallstrom said and Councilor Huddle, of getting as many of these before you in as good a shape as we can over the course of the next couple, 3 months.
Okay, so I think we've got 2 issues here. We want to approve or disapprove July 5th minutes, get rid of the 1018 and 11-1 minutes. Don't approve those at this time. And also the second issue would be to approve the way that the minutes are written, either the short form or a longer form. So let's talk about the way the minutes are written. Are we interested in doing the more minimal amount, although legal, which is the short form, or a longer form? So do I have a motion for one of those to approve the way that we write the minutes? Yes.
May I comment before a motion?
Certainly.
Okay, we've been through this exercise months ago on short, medium, long versions. We agreed that had nothing to do with the content of these minutes.
That's correct.
We have you have, like County Council says it, or interim administrator Hitt, you may have 5 pages from a 2-hour meeting. We have 6-hour meetings around here, sometimes 7-hour meetings. It has nothing to do, we've been through the short, medium. That's not the issue here. The issue was the flow, the grammar, and the accuracy of the minutes, not the long, short version. We've spent I think a workshop, we spent a lot of time going through
Well, and
multiple versions, so
I certainly agree that it needs to be accurate and grammatically correct. I don't have a problem with that, but I think John Jesuit would need a little more instruction as to, do we want to have a more brief form that is also legal or not? Would you want that, Council Huddle?
Sorry, thanks. I think, again, working through county administrator, in this case interim county administrator Hitt, to tell him what you want the minutes to be like, and then he can work with John Jesuit on them. And yes, I was not aware, at least I don't recall being aware of Commissioner Huxley's communication to John Hitt, and I don't know how much that got recommunicated to John Jesuit when John Jesuit and I put together this agenda item. I just wanted these on here for example for the board to discuss and direct staff. And I think because these things are still being produced in the manner they are, I don't think we have clear direction either from the board or from the interim county administrator on how to do these minutes. But regardless, we're trying to reduce the backlog. We just selected these as samples. As you can see, they say draft on them. We're just trying to get, if you start looking at these things, page 52 of the packet, page 48, 49, you know, that one goes on for 5 or 6 pages. Just having, is that a format that you're looking for with these bullet points, with these blocks? And certainly Commissioner Huxley's been active, but it's a board matter. And so what we're looking for is a consensus among the board, not, you know, in addition to the comments from Commissioner Huxley and the feedback from Commissioner Huxley. It's a board matter. So that's why we're here before the board, and it is an issue of business for us to do.
Madam Chair, if I may make a motion?
Sure.
And that would be the short form, and I'm envisioning that to be 1 or 2 pages with heavy doses of references to the video that is available. And I'm not sure if maybe it could be or should be a second motion or separate motion, but I think I've been under the impression all this time that the meetings are held indefinitely as public record, not just 1 or 2 years. Am I missing something here? And maybe I should do that after the motion. I apologize.
Okay, so let me clarify this. I don't think in your motion you can say it's going to be 1 or 2 pages because we can't limit it, but you want the short form.
What is your feeling on a general
I think we have to have the
form?
basics in there, the motions, the type of discussion that took place, not every single point in the discussion, along with when it occurred on the video. So if an interested person wanted to look at the video in more detail, they could do so easily. So,
Administrator Hitt, would that shorten the process and the time required, the expense involved?
It certainly would.
Okay. So I think my motion is understood.
okay.
I'm asking.
Did I explain it
following
in such a way that?
Yes, I'm.
Okay,
I'm
that it is understood.
content.
Okay, is there a second to that motion?
I'll second for discussion.
Okay, let's
Can you
discuss.
restate? Are you looking for a restatement
Yeah.
of the motion?
Yeah.
We're looking for a more clear restatement of the motion.
Well, simple. We're looking at it in the general sense of an option here for Administrator Hitt on the short version, the short form of the regular meetings that we have with continual references to the audio. Simple.
So that was like the 7-5, all meetings, actually. We have to ask.
Excuse me.
Yeah,
yes.
all meeting.
Again, comment, or you want a second for discussion again? What do we want to do here?
We'll have a second for discussion.
Okay,
Did you understand that motion sufficiently?
Looking for a short form with references to video. I don't have an exact.
Would we say similar to July 5th, 2017?
And then how does I don't understand the reference to the county administrator. Commissioner Boyce mentioned with John Hitt.
That's not part of the motion, I don't believe.
Okay, Commissioner Huxley?
It wasn't part of the motion then. Okay.
I would motion, or a comment, okay, just a comment, not to confuse the motion that's been made. I refer you back, I don't have the date, refer back to when we did this already. We looked at a short version, a medium version, and a long version, and we agreed, I think, on a short version, but we've been through this. I just don't have the meeting.
Maybe we need to make it
June
official
14th.
rather than in a
this
workshop.
has already been done.
Yeah, I know what you're saying.
I don't understand.
Administrator Hitt?
I appreciate your frustration there, Commissioner Huxley, and I'll share it with you to this extent. I was somewhat on the other side of it, and this is just from my recollection, so I apologize if it's an error. But my recollection was last time we had any kind of significant discussion on this, we had, I think you're correct, 3 samples of minutes, and you did express a preference for the shorter form. But then the next meeting, when we brought that back for a different meeting, we ended up making substantial, you ended up making substantial amendments to those minutes that added more complexity, made them more detailed. So I felt a little uncertain as to, okay, then really how much would you find some significant detail, additional detail, a fair balance. So Commissioner Huxley makes a good point. I think you've already kind of gone down this road, but I think also it's maybe a good idea to kind of reconfirm along the basis of Commissioner Boyce's motion.
So do you think a motion have it official, that we want the short form?
I think that would be good.
Okay, so we have a motion? Yes.
Just wanted to, and I understand Commissioner Boyce is saying reference to the videos as much as possible. The one issue is once the minutes are approved, as the rules, and Commissioner Huxley reminds us that the videos can be, destroyed a year after that. So to reference to a video that doesn't exist, I think that can be a courtesy. We certainly can include references to the video for when we have them, but I don't want the board to think that will allow people in perpetuity to go back to the video. That being, that being said, I would. It sounds like what the board is looking for is for minutes that meet the minimum of the Attorney General standards, which are those 5 bullet points, and not anything that's like a transcript form. These minutes, if you take a look, I mean, if we could just look at page 63, for instance, and 62 of your agenda packet. I have to believe this is exceedingly time-consuming for John Jesuit. He's looking, you can see these, they've got minute by minute. First, it has the minute of the meeting, and you've got people's names, and then their questions. This looks very much like a transcript, and I think this, for instance, is too long and not summary, and therefore I'm getting the sense that the board does not want this in the minutes, even though you can, looking at these, go directly to it. But I have to believe this takes an inordinate amount of time to prepare these. And I think, shortening that, eliminating the time references, perhaps a time reference to when it starts and a time reference to when it's ended is fine, and then summarize the details in the middle makes sense. And I apologize, Commissioner Huxley, if that was some of your past conversation and direction to Administrator Hitt on these things. But again, that's the kind of thing we're asking the board. Do you need the kind of detail that's provided on page 55, 61, 62? I would think not, and I think that's goes way beyond what's the minimum required.
So, question, could we just put a disclaimer down at the bottom of the minutes that these videos will not be available in perpetuity or some such thing?
We could refer to the AG retention manual, sure.
Okay. Commissioner Boyce?
I'm going to recommend, I'm not going to make an additional motion.
No, I don't think so.
But
This was just to clarify direction and kind of explain some things.
I would like to spend some time, or even suggest that the board consider spending time with the county clerk on keeping these records as well. Maybe I'm missing something here, but I'm baffled that we would have public records, especially with the technology we have nowadays, that's going to go away in a year or two. Charles, if I may, Madam Chair, did you want to speak to that?
Charles, do you want to speak to that?
This is just shocking to me.
Charles Douglas, Brand Media. Twice in one meeting. Let's not make it happen. We certainly have in triplicate both on-site and offsite and in the cloud, as it were, on the internet, copies of every video we've done for going back 15 months now. And we're happy to make arrangements with the county for long-term duplicate cloud storage of all those records. So we can have that conversation offline and make those arrangements
Right.
if you prefer.
I don't think that's appropriate right now.
Why?
So we've got
Excuse
the whole
me.
conversation. We can do it later.
Boy, it's an issue, so I hope we can revisit it fairly soon. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Okay.
Thank you, Charles.
We've got a motion on the floor, a second. Do we have any further discussion? Okay, that motion was to approve having the minutes in the brief form as presented on 7/5. That was the minutes that were given. So, further discussion? Commissioner Huxley?
Yes. There was a note here in the agenda routing slip, you know, at least one commissioner received draft minutes by email. Yes, that I am that commissioner because I requested them. Okay. And have been up to, but not including the 7/5. I had not I've received copies of everything but that. Okay, so you know, I haven't read the minutes for 7/5, so I will agree with the, you know, short version, but I won't approve them because I haven't read them.
Oh, we're not approving the 7/5 minutes. All we're
Oh,
approving
I thought we
is.
were.
That was a request, but the motion was not to do
Yeah, the
that. It
motion
was
didn't-
just to give
Okay,
direction
okay,
on
so
form.
to,
So
okay,
there's
so
never
we'll
been a
withdraw
motion to
all
approve those.
three. Is that correct?
Well, right now, it's been bifurcated
Okay.
into two separate questions. So the
Right,
first question is just
right.
to.
Okay.
The first
so
question
go back
is,
and do what we
do
did
we agree
before,
with the short form?
you know,
Okay, so are we ready? Let's call for the question.
aye.
Aye. Okay, so short form it is. Yay. Okay, I think what we will do is just postpone the approval of the minutes till a further meeting rather than
Okay.
getting into the minutia there. Okay, so we did the minutes. Okay, timber salvage, Commissioner Boyce.
Thank you, Madam Chair. What's my, do I have to minus out up here, Mr. Jesuit? And I think, where are we on the mouse? Did you get away with the mouse, the famous mouse?
There you go.
Well, thank you, Madam Chair. I'll try and be brief. This is a 30-second video taken from my home in Agnes, less than a mile. This is a plane, forgive me, I think it's a 727, don't quote me on that, but it has a tremendous load of retardant. You'll see an upper plane pop into view here in a moment, and it is leading the retardant plane precisely where it wants it to drop. This is what happens when the Forest Service wants to put out a fire immediately. Not in the wilderness. I just happen to be, don't judge me on my talent of filming, but that fire, and there wasn't a lot of ground crew, incidentally, as well on that. So which one am I going to next? This one, John, was it the bottom one? Madam Chair, this was pulled off or didn't get put.
Got some sound effects
Uh-oh.
there. Yeah, you better close the other one out.
You want to see it again? Sorry, guys.
Better, yeah.
Thank you. So this is a draft letter that I was recommending in addition to Commissioner Gold. I understand that you met with the new interim supervisor, Russell. This is a letter that I wanted to propose that we send for additional timber harvest on the burned salvage. And I think this is action we could take today. Have staff, it needs refined some, but it gets the major emphasis that the 7 if we're lucky, the 7% that we would get on the 170,000 acres, give or take, of the amount of damaged timber is just not enough. And we're running out of time. We've already lost, you know, as you know, we're 4 months almost to the day from fire season. And with the amount of fuel load that we have, the dead and dying timber, we are headed for a perfect storm this summer, maybe next year. I'm concerned we're going to have the worst fire season coming up. Some of us tried to warn the public early in July of last year. Lo and behold, the fire was discovered a week after that, after we had our public meeting inviting all of the fire departments. So Brookings is in jeopardy, Gold Beach is in jeopardy, the entire Oregon coast is in jeopardy, and I'll get more to that in a minute. So if the board wants to take action on this and ask staff to approve this letter, refine it, whatever. This is January 31st. It basically says the same thing to the acting, well, she's from Powers, the Ranger District, and she's taken a good lead, and so far has been, I think, reasonably good to work with. The problem is she is restricted somewhat by the NEPA process and the folks that have control of the National Environmental Protection Act, and that is the extreme environmentalists that have got us to this point. So this is just, this will be up on the site, subject to staff Jesuits' approval in the next few days if the public wants to visit this. This just gives a much more detailed background on why it would be the absolutely very best thing for Curry County, with some good links. You know, for example, restoring the forest ecosystem. As you know, some of our areas so badly burned that even if we had the seedlings, which unfortunately have a terrible shortage of seedlings in the Pacific Northwest, even if we plant them in the soil as badly as it's burned, it's like planting in sand. The soil is burnt severely down, at least 10 inches in most places. So that soil's not coming back for a long time. But yet we still have the moral responsibility to do everything we can to reforest immediately. Long after we're gone, the forests return. So the pictures here, this shows you what our forest used to look like. This is just about a 20 degree out of a 360 degree circle, just looking kind of northeast. The Garden Ridge area, Kate Road. And we'll come back to, the reason I used the video, this is on July 17th or 18th when the fire is still pretty small. I can't guess the acreage. I believe reasonable to assume it was still under 100 acres there. You can see the size of these trees. This is not inaccessible by air, similar to the video I showed you. And the smoke here is a reflection on the window, I'm told, of the helicopter. But if you look at, you know, it's obviously low down in the duff, as they call it. And so, you know, so many people I know are still trying to get the original IncoWeb reports to determine just what the Forest Service did on this fire and who was in charge. And as you know, I was in the sheriff's office asking on July 17th, 5 days after this fire was discovered, to ask Ms. Lanier to hit it with absolutely everything she had. And the helicopters were standing by and for a variety of reasons did not get used. This is on the 22nd when the fire's still pretty small. Satellite photo, of course. This is on, well, for goodness sake. Wow, one click. There we go. July 18th, 19th. This is 2 days before, as you know, it went 11 miles in a little over, about 30 hours. And that's when all the series of evacuations took place. And then it was on the 20th when we lost 7 homes. And then, as you know, it got within 5 miles of Brookings. We had a wind change, which saved that community and harbor as well. The amount of smoke, you know, I referenced with Mr. Paulson to give public comment that he had a friend pass from the smoke that was relatively healthy. And again, I reference to the folks from the 911 terrorist attack in New York. People still suffering years later from that smoke. And Curry County needs to be heard on this. And this is just one of 14 or 15 days where it was in the extreme or hazardous smoke level. And not just Brookings, more so than Gold Beach, but the winds kept the smoke from going into other parts of the state, generally speaking, but of course that's what moved the fire down the Checo River Canyon towards Brookings. This is on the 22nd. And of course this is after the fire, the same picture that I showed you, the first one there. And you can see back up here as far as you can see looking northeast. And of course it goes further as you look straight east towards Selma. Unbelievable destruction. 1/5 of our county. Same thing here as far as you can see.
Administrator Hitt?
Yes.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Just a question for you, Commissioner. Could you back up to that last picture with the home and then all the burned trees? Do you have any idea why those trees in the foreground didn't burn?
Luck.
Oh, really? Okay.
Luck. Of course, this is, if I may introduce Cecilia, please.
Yeah,
Worthing?
Cecilia, come forth. She was the one that was involved in the...
Come forth.
My name is Cecilia Worrelton. That was my home. The trees in the foreground are still there because they were downhill.
Oh, okay. Okay.
The fire came, the river is behind our house downhill on the other side.
Back in this gully here, correct?
Back in.
Yeah, that's the North Fork.
Back down.
Back there, yeah.
And so when the fire came, it came uphill, across the river,
okay.
and it shot uphill.
Okay.
And this is severely burned right here. The land is sterile.
Okay.
Nothing is growing there. But this was downhill. It did come around here.
You need to be on the microphone, see.
Excuse me. It did come around the front there a little bit, and why it died out, I don't know.
Okay.
But they were downhill.
Okay.
Thanks.
You can stay there for a minute if you want. If you want to add something, I'd appreciate it. We also have, we had Larry Ismert, who is a retired forester, but he might be back.
It was devastating, obviously. The Biscuit fire came 5 miles from our home. We did evacuate that time, totally evacuated. My husband was on a trip, so I was evacuating by myself. This year, I had 100% confidence that we would be taken care of because the year before the Biscuit fire, we had been taken care of. We had firefighters up there getting ready to wrap our house. They were cleaning off my deck. They were cleaning out my eaves. They trimmed up a tree a little bit. So I had help. So this time, I was out of town when this all happened, and no one came up. Somebody looked and called my neighbor and said, "We would like to help them. Is there a way to get a hold of them?" He gave them our information. No one called us. We both had our phones on us. No one called us. And so this time it got us. But it came 5 miles from town. So my great concern is, if it got me this time, what's it going to do to Brookings next time if something doesn't happen? If we don't take action to manage that forest the way that it's supposed to be managed.
Thank you.
Thanks.
You know, this requires a little pause when you just try and process just a small segment of the 192,000 acres. Dust. I had to get a horse in there, sorry. This is Jerry Thompson's homestead and some of the grave sites for some of her ancestors. Their families have been there for a little over 140 years, I believe. Now, I hold the extreme environmentalists responsible The national statistics are in a general fire per acre, 22 four-legged, it could just be a lizard, but it can also be a deer, elk, bobcat. 22 die in a fire. There's variations of that, but it's not a pretty sight. And we can get, the public needs to know that because of that 4 months, because we are not really, haven't made a lot of progress on firewise-ing communities, that we are really at risk. And again, I'm going to emphasize the entire Oregon coast is. So what do cats do when they don't know what else to do? They can't run from the fire. Their instincts don't have a clear shot because the wind can change instantly, so they tree. You know, I'm not a real cougar guy because of the deer population, the danger they have to the visitors that like to go on these trails. But that's an example of what the bad policies have brought to our county. I don't think it can be overstated. This quick graph just shows from 1990 the amount of acres average, except Alaska. But you can see each year it's going up, and there's a reason for that. And it's because we're not, I don't want to state the obvious, but we have in the Siskiyou National Forest, we've had very few of any significance timber contracts that have been allowed. And so much is taken out of availability for harvest. And of course, that's a two-edged sword. We lose the funds for our counties as well. It becomes increased fire danger. So you can see 217, it's just going to keep going up. I think that's quite obvious. This is an article by Jim Peterson. I know him quite well. I used to take him on the river a lot, and he has moved from Oregon to he lives in Idaho now, and he wrote an article that this will also be up on the site. If anybody listening wants this, it's some incredibly good information. I won't read it, of course, but it compares the states and similar graphs on the rise of the fire danger that we're faced with in the West and what we're losing. And it's just not in rural areas anymore. The suburban areas, due to the Eagle Creek fire on the Columbia River, much more risk than we've had for years. Washington, Evergreen State, no more. And I'll keep saying we grow the highest quality, fastest growing trees right here in Southwest Oregon. And we just have a major fight on our hands to push back against the policies that are absolutely stealing our kids' future. Tony Took, he was here in September. I got to meet with him on a private meeting, and I'm going to see him again in April. I'm going to fly back there, and God willing, and I want him to know that the 7%, and it's probably more likely going to be 4 or 5% of the burned timber, is just not enough, and he has the authority and I believe the responsibility, and I hope I can have the persuasion to ask him to increase that harvest. And then the Forest Service has two other responsibilities: help us with fire prevention, and of course reforestation. So I think that's it. Yeah. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Okay, thank you. Moving on, Commissioner Huxley comment. Before we get into this, let me just tell you what I've done, because I said that.
Okay.
Did I do the wrong thing? We did
so-
timber salvage.
Yeah, but Commissioner Boyce, did you want something agreed to?
Was there a letter or
there?
something you
Well,
wanted a motion
There's two
to?
letters. They're both dated March 7th, 2018. One's got an X through it, one doesn't.
Go to the back page, and that's another draft that we could work with if you want to direct staff. We want to direct staff to come up with another letter that we could approve as soon as possible and get this to Jim Pena in Portland, the regional U.S. Forest Service Director, and all the way to, and of course, Scott Russell, who it's addressed to, who I recommend addressing it to, as a united board. Thank you.
So it's not something that we want to necessarily.
We don't want a
approve.
motion today, or you want to
Well,
have direction for
this
staff
letter's
to-
not ready to go. So
Okay.
I don't
That
want to
was my
approve that
question.
letter. Yes.
Okay.
I just want something that we can I'll perhaps have input
Okay.
in, direct staff, go from there.
Okay.
I'm okay with that. How about you, Commissioner Huxley? Yeah, I'd personally rather wait until I've had a chance to read.
I'm more than fine with that.
Okay.
If I may,
Mr. Huxley?
Kate, but what is the purpose, the main point of the letter, be it draft or otherwise? What is the main purpose of the letter?
Right now, the urgency is we have about a year, 2, 3, 4 months maximum remaining before all the timber that's burned will be, nobody will want to bid on it because it'll have no value. The decomposition process really starts to accelerate as soon as we hit summer. So we need, what I would ask for in the letter, and I left that vague for a reason, I would ask for a minimum of 20% of the burn salvage outside the wilderness area. It needs to include the LSR, which is some incredible trees that will, and it's stated in the letter, will never come back. And that's also in addition to the road hazard danger tree salvage, which should be kept separate in my view. So increase in burned timber salvage harvest.
Those points
Urgent.
will be added
Yes.
so that we can understand what the purpose of the letter is. That's my question.
Those points are in there except for, I would, subject to the board's approval, I would I would shoot for 25%, and we still, that's a major mountain to climb with a year limitation on how long this timber will be viable and valuable.
Okay, so your main point is to increase the timber salvage.
Yes.
Okay, good.
Well, I think it says that, doesn't it?
Well, kind of wanders a bit.
RE, Checo Bar Fire Curry County Recovery, okay.
That's why I was asking.
I said
Okay.
it was a draft. I'm not bragging about
Well,
the letter.
no,
Thank you.
that's why we want to be specific.
I
Okay,
appreciate
so
that.
it looks like we have the direction to do so. Okay, so next we're talking about Commissioner Huxley's comments and
Was there going to be a motion or just consensus?
Direction.
Consensus.
We got
John Hitt, you've
consensus.
got that? Okay,
Yes, I
very
do.
good. Thanks.
Okay, before we get into Commissioner Huxley's comments, I would like to say a few things, and then we're going to let Dave Barnes say something. Last meeting, Commissioner Boyce wanted this put on the agenda, and I said, no, not at this time. I wanted to go back and review the video, which I did a number of times, and this is what I found. I found nothing in the video that was offensive to me. I thought there was, if I thought there was anything illegal or offensive, I would have filed an ethics complaint. Also, I reviewed the rules of decorum, and I perceived that there was no actual disruption to the meeting as a result of this issue. And I also asked Council Huddle if he would review what happened. And Council Huddle, can you give us your opinion now?
Well, if the focus is on the rules of decorum, and I think that's the focus, the rules of decorum only allow for any kind of discipline in case of an actual disruption, and it's up to the board to determine that, and you've indicated you don't think there is one, and I think that's appropriate. So.
Okay. So, David Barnes, you wanted to speak to this issue?
Thank you, Madam Chair. I did, but after your comments, I don't feel any need to anymore. I completely disagree with your opinion that there was no offense given, and if I tried to bring to this board back in October my concerns at that time of Commissioner Huxley's conduct as a board member. I thought they were appallable and despicable at the time. I still find them to be the same way. This county has lost innumerable people with hundreds of years of service to the county. It's just, I sit in the audience and I watch the faces Commissioner Huxley makes that are like a 4-year-old who got a bowl of creamed broccoli put in front of him that he didn't like as Commissioner Boyce speaks. I just, for you to say that he's done nothing wrong and you're not going to act on it, I question, now I question you as well as question him. And that's all I have to say. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Commissioner Boyce?
Thank you, Madam Chair. I think the message, I'm just processing your decision, and I think I'm surprised, but I think the message it sends to our employees, our department heads, our community, the people we serve, the schools, the backhanded gesture from for Mr. Huxley, I just am shocked that we're not even going to say, would you please apologize? Are you going to continue to do that? That kind of behavior? So that's all I have. I'm very disappointed, of course.
Okay, thank you. Okay, moving on. Can I get the mouse here?
It's going to cost you.
It's going to cost me?
I'm glad he didn't have this gavel in his hand.
Okay, I brought up the point of Sutter Coast overcharges several meetings ago, talking about why we needed to come up with a letter. I came up with a letter and passed it out at the meeting, the last meeting, and inadvertently the wrong thing got in the agenda. So let's see if we can get this to come up. John?
Too quick.
Yeah, quick.
Right on the blue.
I'm right there, baby.
You got it.
Okay, so I guess I could read it. This is all to the Sutter Coast Board of Directors, CEO Mitch Hanna. The issue of Sutter Coast Hospital's extremely high, I'm going to read it from here, it's easier. Extremely high health care service charges has been repeatedly brought to our attention. These excessive charges on the citizens in Curry County result in severe hardships financially, emotionally, and physically. We are also concerned about the total lack of transparency in posting your service charges, as well as excluding public knowledge of and input to your board meetings. We support the concept that tax-exempt public benefit corporations should be accountable to the public. You are surely aware that these issues were addressed by this commission in June of last year. The presentation provided by Carlos Priestley, Sutter Coast Hospital Administrator, at that BOC meeting advocated that we rescind the letter of concern at that time. We respected his request with the assurances that specific issues would be addressed and resolved by January of this year. Unfortunately, there has been no additional communication or resolution of the negative impacts on the citizens of both Del Norte and Curry counties. A primary concern regards the repeated promises by Sutter that the M-Care contract for emergency room services would be remediated in the contract renewal January 2018. This has not occurred. In fact, Mr. Priestley's recent presentation at the Del Norte Health District meeting verified that M-Care is continuing to be the sole emergency care provider. Yet the issue of outrageous and unwarranted charges to out-of-network patients has not been addressed or resolved. We are sure that you and the administration of the Sutter Coast Health Corporation are cognizant that both Curry and Del Norte counties are designated as medically and provider underserved by our federal government. Relevant components of these designations include our poverty levels, aged population, and rural and remote location. To impede and or effectively deny essential emergency care by your charges and contractual agreements is in direct contradiction to the purpose and intent of federal/state exempt tax exemptions for hospital corporations. Let's make sure we let everybody see. As commissioners, we have an obligation to advocate for affordable, accessible, and effective health care for our constituents. It should be to our mutual benefit to protect the interests of well-being of our citizens, since they constitute approximately 1/3 of the service provision and revenue to Sutter Coast. Our request is that Sutter's excessive charges and out-of-network contractual agreement with M-Care be reviewed and revised as promised. Further, request that all charges and costs of care are established within market averages and provided publicly in accord with the public's right to informed consent. And hopefully you'll agree with that and we can send it off. Commissioner Huxley.
Okay, when you handed this out, I addressed the fact that it wasn't included in the
Yes,
fact,
you did.
Which you've addressed also, and that I had spoken with, is it Priestley? And said nothing at this meeting,
Right.
because there's nothing there. Then in your first paragraph, now you want it signed today, and in your first paragraph, you talk about a total lack of transparency.
So I have a question. Would you be willing to bring it up at the next meeting?
Well, absolutely. You know,
Okay.
I just, you put it in the packet for people to see.
I know, that was a mistake.
That's, okay.
I wish I were mistake-proof, but I'm not. Jeez.
So, but I think that,
Okay.
let's be transparent.
I would not have a problem with bringing it back at the next meeting for discussion, further discussion. Any other comment? Commissioner Boyce?
Well, you've been a champion, I think, of this issue. Not that I agree with you, but what I'd like to comment, Madam Chair, is that have we made an honest attempt to try and get Sutter hospital executives into a room where we can just sit down eyeball to eyeball across from the table and just say, hey, we have a great concern here. I wish you'd have had this kind of feistiness early on with the Forest Service when you said I was attacking the Forest Service. And just to challenge you, ma'am, I feel this is attacking them. And no, I won't sign it, not even close. I want to get them in a room, and their business. And that's not to excuse any bad behavior or bad billing practices, but we do not want them to be part of a similar situation like the Del Norte Airport, where they just basically go out of business. I'm not saying that is going to happen, but it has. When you have as many people as we have in South County that are dependent on that hospital, I want to see if there's a way we can bring everybody together, maybe even invite the Curry Health Network people and say, hey, how do we resolve these? I think this letter is way too forceful, and I don't think it's going to do any good. I could be wrong, but no, I won't sign it. Thank you.
Okay, thank you.
So we have, Chair, we have consensus then to bring this, is that correct?
Yes, to bring it back. Mm-hmm.
Okay.
And quite frankly, let me address some of your concerns.
Certainly, ma'am.
These issues have been brought forth with the Del Norte Health District, and he was there at their meeting, and nothing has been done, basically. So the overcharges are continuing.
Do you, if I may?
Yes.
Do you feel like we could sit down with them though and be a little more forceful and personally, but yet in a serious attempt to just do that negotiation, and just so much more can be done at a roundtable discussion, and everybody being heard, and finding some common ground. I've overstated it as it is, but that just would be my feeling, Madam Chair.
Okay, good enough. So moving on, gotta find my agenda here. Bruce Bischoff agreement. So, Council Huddle, do you want to talk about that?
Is that F?
Well,
is that F?
That's F, yes.
thank you. The board, without going into the deliberations that were in exec session, we talked about, because this involved labor negotiations. I don't have a lot more comments other than the document in front of you, and we can go over that. But essentially, it's retaining Bruce Bischoff to represent the board in labor negotiations with both the Teamsters and the SEIU, and then on the terms and conditions set forth in that agreement, it's a 2-pager. He gives an hourly rate. He gives an hourly rate for travel, and he says he'll represent up to the ERB, I think, but not beyond, probably additional charges for that. So really, it's not a lot that I can add to the document. And then the question is if the board wants to retain him or not for these negotiations on those terms. So it's up to the board.
Okay, so do I have a motion to have Bruce Bischoff retained?
Madam Chair?
Oh, yes.
Thank you, Madam Chair, Commissioners. Just a question, and of course I only read this this morning. John Hill, do you have any idea? I think last time, and I know Commissioner Huxley asked me about this, as I recall, our last attorney that represented in the last session, I think the total fee was around $30,000. Is
Right.
that correct? As you Yeah. So, and my understanding in talking with Sina Crook was that, excuse me, Brenda Starbird, that the rate that we paid that attorney was a fair bit less than this rate. So so John, do you have any idea what we might be looking at total, or is that really impossible to kind of predict?
Well, it's a little bit hard to predict, but at the same time, what this proposal is that this lawyer would not attend every negotiation session as the other lawyer did.
Okay.
And so there would be less hands-on. This lawyer would basically be a consultant off-site. He would come to one of the initial meetings to establish, the presence, the ground rules, all those kind of things. And then he would remotely confer with staff after the meetings. It's almost similar to, for instance, the jurisdiction I came from, the lawyer wasn't sitting in the bargaining sessions. I think you've had similar experience. Where I came from, it was the HR director did all the negotiations, then he would come back in exec session to the board or council and those kind of things. And so the last negotiations, that attorney was in every meeting, however long they lasted, including travel time. So this attorney, even though the rate is a little higher, is proposing a different MO, I guess.
Okay.
So sort of only as needed versus every minute of the process. So that's why I think in the long run, even though the rate is higher, it could be a little less. So.
Commissioner Huxley?
Okay, I think he was first.
Go ahead, he's first.
We were provided, I believe, again, in one of the executive sessions on this by county council, or it may have been in an email attachment, I'm not sure, but basically a short resume of the extent of union negotiations that this fellow has done. And to say that it was impressive would be an understatement. I think I don't know if county council has that available. I don't here. But it read like, his claim was, I think, indication was that he had represented more employers and so forth in Oregon and Washington than any other attorney.
I don't think there's anyone more qualified to do this work than him in the state.
It just seemed like very, very qualified.
Yeah.
Commissioner Boyce?
Thank you, Madam Chair. Well, I'm just going to be a little bit blunt. I don't figure we need him. I don't figure we can afford this service. And, early on when I got to know Mr. Hitt and was opposed to a county administrator, I looked at your information, and you have substantial background. Not that you've told me that or bragged about that, but you have substantial background in exactly what we're hiring him for. And, I'll take my chances with you. And I really am going to ask the board to not commit us to some kind. I've never seen an attorney charge less than what you anticipated. Their time is incredibly valuable. Needless to say, but I just don't think we don't have the 30,000, and we don't need his or anybody else's services. We kind of learned that last year. We don't know what the future is at the budget. So I want to emphasize that I think that's you've had very broad experience, Administrator Hitt, and so that's the route I absolutely want to go. And at least if we can't do that, let us do our research, Madam Chair, and just evaluate this additionally and see where we're at. And even to the extent of looking further into Mr. Hitt's resume and his background. It's at our fingertips and invaluable. Thank you.
So do we have a motion on the floor to approve, or?
I would motion to approve the agreement between Curry County and Bruce Bischoff for attorney services relating to SEIU and Teamsters negotiations as outlined in the agenda routing slip and order that was provided to us this morning.
Is there a second? I'll second that. Any further discussion?
Just if
Administrator
I
Hitt.
may ask you a question, Madam Chair and Commissioners, Assuming you approve this agreement, then are we kind of how it would operate in your mind is that I would be the one that would decide when we would need his assistance, at least on the scene, versus phone call communications and that type of thing? Or would you rather refer on those things to Councillor Huddle, or just kind of?
You know, when we talked about this, we didn't discuss that particular issue, but he indicated that it would be maybe 2 meetings he would be here for. Is that correct? Am I?
Depending upon the direction that things go, correct?
Right. Okay, so.
I think that could be resolved between, my understanding is he would come down initially. So I think at an initial meeting, John Hitt, you'd have a chance
Okay.
with the board acts on this to interface with him, suss out those details. But what the sense was, John Hitt, was that he would.
Your mic on? Oh, you lose your mic there.
You got to start over.
The sense John Hitt was that this fellow would come down initially and then make himself available. My hunch is there would be some level of exec session you would be in, and we could establish those, interactions. But I think what you're proposing makes a ton of sense. And again, the principal concept where his idea was to keep costs down was that he would not attend every bargaining session, and essentially he would be like a special county counsel for labor negotiations. So for instance, in the old model, if you were doing it and then you would go back and circle back with your county counsel, instead of working with in-house county counsel, you'd work with him. Because he's not intending to be in the room, and I think you are still intended to be as the management team, more or less leader in the, yeah, I think so.
So he's more of an advisor.
Yes, I think
Right.
so, versus the
Right.
negotiator, and the
Right.
board establishes what the parameters of the negotiations are in exec session. So he's just there to assist the negotiating team, but not to be sitting in the room doing the edits to the documents as the old council did that led to some of those expenses. So that's just kind of the differences there between them.
Any other discussion? Call for the question?
Whoops, sorry.
Okay.
If I may, Madam Chair, just clarification. So are we including or amending that motion that that would be subject to your approval or your direction, guidelines to when and if he's, or excuse me, not if we're hiring him, obviously, but when he would be needed? Is that what I'm understanding here? You said you
No,
referenced
that
his
decision would be
proposal?
made later when they meet together.
Right, that's not an amendment to the motion, and that's a clarification that would come out later, is all, so.
So it'd be a lot cheaper to send you to Ben than it would be to send him here. If you need to meet with him.
Yeah, that is true.
I'll drive you. Still be cheaper. Okay.
Call for the question?
Aye.
Aye.
No.
Okay, we are coming up quickly. Let's talk about old business. I don't think that's going to take too long. Curry County 4-H Extension Service District Budget Officer appointment. Do we have a motion to approve that?
I'll so move, Madam Chair.
I'll second that motion.
Do we have any discussion? Hearing no discussion, call for the question.
Aye.
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 Okay, the next item of business I think is going to be considerably longer. This is the Head Start grant status. And so I suggest that we have our lunch break right now until 1 o'clock. And we will meet back here to have that discussion. Do I have a motion to that? Yes.
Well, just a brief question, Madam Chair. Sorry to interrupt. Mike, are you going to be able to? Okay.
He's going to hang out for lunch,
Okay,
I can
great.
tell. Okay, so we will adjourn until 1 o'clock and then continue with the meeting.
Recess.
Recess, sorry. I don't want to say the wrong word. This meeting's now in session or resuming. And we'll begin with discussion on the Brookings Head Start Grant. Council Huddle.
Trying to get my mic on.
So on the Brookings Head Start Grant, the status is that we are in a position of decision-making. We're at a stage where under our agreement with the State Infrastructure Finance Authority, they said we could still consider this a planning grant. One of the issues was whether they would invoke the clause in the contract that says if we fail to perform the grant, they can ask for the money back that has been spent. And they said at this stage we can call it a planning grant, and they will allow us to do an appraisal and also a building inspection on the property so that the board could have information to make a decision as to whether to go forward or not. And then if the board says no, they will consider it a planning grant and they will not invoke the reimbursement amount. So what's in your package is the appraisal that came, oh, by the way, also, Mike Lehman from Orca is here in the audience. He's willing to answer questions and, oh, thanks, JJ. And I think it would be appropriate to have him, because again, Orca is a beneficiary of the project, and it'd be appropriate to have him speak a little bit if the board would agree. But for now, if you look in your packet, you'll see that the appraisal came in at $370,000, which is very different from the letter appraisal that we received from the realtor. And if I'm not mistaken, just going off my memory, our acquisition funding under the grant was roughly $314,000 to acquire the property. So $370,000 is, $56,000 above that. And so we would probably need to have SWOC agree to contribute that as a donation to the project, which is allowed under the rules. We would need the state and SWOC to agree to that. And then that's the appraisal part. And then after that, we have the whole hazard building inspection. So for the appraisal, I just put in the first couple of pages to keep the packet manageable and gave you the summary. With the building inspection, it has the just really the explanation of what he did, and that report also speaks for itself. If I could summarize it, it would be that he's identified roughly $16,000 in what he terms immediately needed electrical upgrades, and then other things that he called discretionary over time. And I would imagine that the electrical upgrades could be accomplished during the remodel, but also Mike Lehman might be here to explain some options on that as well. So what I felt after reading the whole house inspection was that it more or less confirmed the eyeball inspection that us lay people did, and Eric Hansen, our facilities maintenance manager, he crawled around a little bit more than us, but I think the consensus was the building is in not that bad a shape. There's been no structural foundation rot issues identified in the inspection, a little bit of issues on the roof, but really nothing that would raise a red flag to say that we are going to be in a heap of trouble if we go forward with the remodel on a structural basis. So really, that's kind of my thinking. I think if you want to hear from Mike about what's Orca and the Head Start project's status, and if Mike has been a liaison with SWOC, because part of this depends on, with this new appraisal, whether SWOC is willing to contribute that additional funding into the project on a donation basis. So that's really all I had. Looking for direction or questions from the board.
So I would like to hear from Mike Lehman to hear what's going on, especially with SWOC, since that appraisal value is so different from the beginning.
Thanks, Commissioners. just one 20-second diatribe before I start in. I wanted to, and maybe lessening the beating I'm going to take following this, but I want to thank the board for your support of the railroad project down there, the railroad project in Brookings. We've co-located our Veteran Services and Housing Authority with your veteran organization. It has worked wonderfully. One-stop shop, particularly veterans go in there and get assistance. So just want to do that, and maybe you'll go a little easier on me with the rest of the presentation. So basically, the building inspection confirmed, I think, what our architect and your property manager and I think it was 3 lawyers at the time looked around the building. The bones are good. The building will stand up to the remodel, probably warrants a remodel. Didn't see any problems. The short-term electrical, we're going to get right on that right now because we have kids in the building, and if that's an issue, we want to know about it. When you look at the details, it sounds more like he looked at the panels and wasn't sure what was in there and had some concerns. So we're probably going to get an electrical contractor and at least somebody in there to take a look at that and see to make certain we're safe to operate. The rest of it we're comfortable with.
No, or my comment, there was no project construction administration for the project, period. That was not included. It's not reimbursable. His comments were that he saw interim administrator hit in that position. My comment is that's a huge cost. It's not reimbursable, and we have right now other things that are falling by, not being accomplished by that position. We're looking at possibly, well, we've already had interviews for other potential administrators. That is not something that you want to have, not if it's going to be done right. And we know what happens if it's not done right. We're here 2 years, 2.5 years later. For that reason, I am absolutely not supportive of this. Cut your losses and move on. And don't stretch things that are too thin now and think that you're going to accomplish it because you're fooling yourself.
So I had a question. Originally, you had stated, Mr. Lehman, that you had an individual that would oversee all of the construction and so forth. Is that still the case, or?
You know, we will never alleviate the issues that Commissioner Huxley, I totally agree that was in this project from day one, that they're there. That said, the architect we have engaged now, I've known a long time. I'm much more confident that I'm going to have interactions with him. And given the fact that ORC is on the hook for the architect fees above what's in the contract, which is considerable, I'm confident that he'll be managing the project much better. We also have individual who does our energy and weatherization projects. There's a lot of contract work. He will be tasked with overseeing this project from our standpoint. So, and to a large degree, the county's perspective is also in terms of making certain this is done on time. So I think we will take a significant portion of the burden off the county once this project gets off the ground. But I can't tell you that it's going to be all of it.
Okay. Council Huddle?
Thanks. And what Mike Lehman is saying on Orca's behalf is important because it's not as if they would be doing this work for the county. They're going to be the ultimate recipients of this building.
Right.
So they've got, you know, the skin in the game, a vested interest, whatever phrase you want to use. So it's not as if they would be doing this for somebody else where, you know, there's a hazard that you wouldn't be as diligent if it was for yourself. They've been really doing it for themselves because they're the recipients ultimately of this. So that's just, you know, so I just wanted to make sure that that statement got the proper, you know, perspective on it.
Any other comments, Commissioner Boyce?
Thank you, Madam Chair. Excuse me. If this doesn't come together, and I guess with just some of the potential safety issues, the age of the building, I mean, I'm looking at pages 109 through 127 on the inspector report, you know, it's just a lot of little things that, but they're noteworthy. Is there a possibility that if we don't make the best decision, or you know, essentially say no, we're going to walk away, doesn't the Head Start program actually shut down? There would be a tremendous void in the community there. Is that a potential reality? What would your thoughts be there? In other words, would it be shut down for safety reasons?
No, I mean, that was one of the issues that came up last time, and then I think I, you know, pushed back a little bit at the last meeting of that. We have safety people go through there all the time, and we're confident that it meets the standards for Head Start. You know, is it nice and fluffy? No, but it meets the standards of Head Start. If this didn't go forward, I wouldn't sit here and tell you Head Start's out of Brookings, goodbye, good luck. We will do something. In fact, we would probably try to come up with funds to acquire this property as is from SWAC and continue operating it in its present state without doing the upgrades. That's less desirable, and I don't know, you know, I have to go back and refigure how we do that. But that would be our first choice. If that didn't work, we would be looking for other sites in the area to rent from or to locate cash service. I will tell you, one of the problems is that when we were looking a couple of years ago, when we were near construction, we thought, we were looking for a place to house Head Start while they did the remodel. And we could not find a location in the Brookings area. So that is the one risk with this. If we do this, we lock Head Start into that community for the future. Without it, we're always going to be in a scramble for space. And that has proven, in some areas, it's proven detrimental to a Head Start program, not being able to find space.
Any other comments, discussion? Yes.
Well, I've been there several times, and it's hard for me to get away from the overall condition, the age of the building, and just the sheer amount of money that we're looking at putting into that. But as you know, I'm very much for trying to figure a way to keep this project and spend the money very wisely, and I still think that can be done. And I'm not against the remodel either. But that leads me just to ask, when we're dealing with the state and it's a CDBG grant, we're still under the schedule, under the gun as far as getting it done, and that also compounds it for me. I wish there was a way, maybe you can help or give us some insight if there's a way to just slow down that process, and you know, God forbid have another workshop, but this is $1.6 million, and maybe I have not had, because of a variety of reasons, the fire primarily, I haven't had a chance to really aggressively look in Brookings for something newer and maybe cheaper and something available, and maybe that's the wrong path to go, but it still seems, with the condition of that building, I'm concerned that it may not be the best value for the dollar.
So, two thoughts. One is, a lot of the stuff that we're seeing now was done long before I got involved or the county commissioners. And there's a lot of prep work. You have to get National Head Start approval to locate in that facility. It's got to meet certain standards. There's a bunch of CDBG stuff that you do beforehand. So a lot of that stuff has been done. If we change direction at this point, I'm not, and remember, we are now in year 7, I believe, of a 3-year grant. So we've had one 3-year extension, which is normal. We had another 1-year extension, which I think they kind of said, this is it. I never quite sure when the state or federal government says this is really it, if that means it. But so we are running into time frames. So I'm not optimistic that if we didn't do this, we could get this grant someplace else. The other thing is, I would also turn that argument around in terms of this structure. It's sound, and if we don't fix that building up and put a Head Start in there, you still have this building that is in bad shape in a prime spot in Brookings, affects the neighborhood, affects the community. So I would turn it around and say there's a neighborhood enhancement part of this that makes that community better down there by having a show place for early learning, near the schools, near the downtown. So I don't think it's structurally that bad, but I think it will be a really nice facility when we're done.
Any other discussion? Commissioner Huxley?
Again, not any different than I just said. I think, Mike's gone through 7 years and perhaps more there in the history. I think, given what's occurred, the county needs to cut their losses, thank the state for forgiving 6 figures, basically, of loss, and walk away from it.
Commissioner Boyce?
Good discussion, and it's very important, and it is a lot of funds. So I've stated in the past on numerous occasions, that's the absolute last resort for me personally, and as a public official here. You are convinced that the remodel would, it just got me thinking that a little more convinced that it would be, those valuable dollars well spent, and it is an important part of our community down there. So you're giving me the confidence on that. And you feel that it would absolutely be very well spent.
Commissioner, in this project, I would never say absolutely about anything. But I can tell you that based on people I rely on, my Head Start folks, relying on the architect that I've talked to, yes, I think this has got a very good chance of proceeding, ending up with a nice facility in a great location.
Okay.
So give us a percent.
Somewhere between 50 and 85, somewhere. I mean, a year ago when I took this on, when this first was on my desk, when I took my job, I just said, oh, this is a slam dunk. I really believe at this stage, I can't imagine what bugs are left in there. I was a bit apprehensive when we did the building inspection. I was worried that we're going to find something there. So it was good to find that the building is solid. We've been through this 6 Places Sunday. I've talked to folks in Brookings. We've talked to Head Start. We've been working with the state and CZD. I'm convinced it's ready to go, as ready as it ever will be. Much better shape, much more know what we're doing now than we did 3 years ago.
I guess my main concern is the amount of money that the county is going to have to, and time, of course, time is money, to put forth on this project, and that's my only concern.
I think I've agreed with Commissioner Huxley from day one. You're right. In hindsight, the amount of time the county has already invested in this project just to get it to this stage. There's just no way around that. And had we all known 7 years ago what was involved, I would say the other part of that is the amount we've invested in so far simply disappears if we don't go forward. And that's a risky bet of saying, put more into it. But I agree. There's no easy way. I honestly believe, and I can say again, I'm convinced it's going to get easier going forward than it's been to this point. And I have people that I'm convinced can do a good job of overseeing this project, which we've not had before. And I'll own that. We've let this thing, I've trusted other people with this project for the first 3 years I've been on the job, and I realized that that's not working.
Because that's our main concern.
Yes.
We don't have the resources to oversee the thing.
I totally get that. I'm just sitting here saying we're trying to make the best out of a bad situation at this stage.
Commissioner Boyce?
I think this is it. My last time.
The amount of money
the amount of money the county spent on this is nothing compared to, we're going out as of today, we've turned into big spenders. We're going to go get a big time lawyer, maybe $30,000 or $40,000, when we have a perfectly good staff that's very experienced, can do that, and then we spend $20,000 or $30,000 to go find a new administrator when we already have a good one. So the little bit of money we're spending on this to do something that's really special and needed and long-term important for the community, I'll just go with where we are on this and not apologize for the little bit the county has extended in time and staff and actual dollars. Thanks for your time here today. And as far as the VSO goes, if you work with the VSO and accomplish what you did there with your staff and working with Veteran Service Officer Vowdy, I will go in without asking for an absolute guarantee. I will go in with confidence. I've been down there twice, and I'm just very proud of that facility. I know you're only about 90% done, but it's looking really good.
Just to add that today we put some money into a conference room down there to teleconference. Today they're conducting an early learning meeting out of the conference room in that building, which we didn't have the capacity to do before. So it's a real plus.
And I almost got a parking ticket parking out front, so beware.
We get 20% of that, so.
Okay. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Okay, any other comments? Well, do we have a motion to proceed? Probably contingent upon getting the remaining funding. That would be the difference between the 314 original appraised value versus the 370,000 appraised value that's been given now.
I'll move, Madam Chair. Don't make me repeat the motion. You did good, though.
Oh, okay. Do we have a second? I'll second that. Further discussion? Call for the question?
Aye.
No.
Aye.
Thanks, Mike.
Okay, moving on. Announcements. March 21st is a general meeting here at 10 a.m. March 28th is a workshop right here, and that's to discuss budget. April 4th is a general meeting here. April 6th is the budget officer distributes the budget worksheets to department heads. And next, interim county administrator. Do you have a report for us?
Yes, a report and one kind of clarification, particularly since I guess this discussion came up while I was gone. So I have down on the agenda monthly financial documents, financial report. Senior clerk puts that together for the department managers and the elected officials on a monthly basis, line item, expenses as she has booked them up to that point. Now, please keep in mind those are often adjusted as the year goes by. Sometimes things are booked to the wrong line item. Sometimes, or there's uncertainty or an expense comes in after a substantial delay, period of time. So there was a question about making these reports available to the Budget Committee, either as a whole or to Mr. King as an individual. I wasn't exactly sure. Commissioner Huxley sent an email, and just want to clarify that you provided the information already to Mr. King. Is that correct, or you are just recommending?
After reading this, yeah, because these are existing public records.
Okay, no question of public records.
Baffling.
I wasn't trying to make any disagreement there at all. So I guess my follow-up question then, since Mr. King already has the documents, is it the desire of the board to provide that information to the entire budget committee, or what we could do is just simply provide a link for the budget committee members to access those reports as they come in, or the third option would be to post them on the county website.
Okay. Commissioner Huxley?
They are not. When we get the link, it's on the county drives, so the public does not have access to those public records.
That's correct.
Yes, they are public records, and they should be, in my opinion, put on the website as public records. They're invaluable. When I get in, I had discussions with county council this morning on this. As far as there's no photocopies involved, the direction was for staff to please provide those electronic records to the budget committee members. Again, they're public records. In my opinion, they should be online or on site or on the website. They're invaluable. They're probably the most valuable. I've gone over them with you.
Yes,
they're probably the most single valuable record that exists at the county for financial purposes. we discussed a little bit this morning, the difficulty or what was involved in providing those or photocopies and so forth. And I not jokingly, but I said to county council, okay, well, look at the clock. Okay, now I'll log in here and let's see how long it takes me to get to the records. And I think we were certainly under a minute to do so, and then another minute or so to email them. We're talking 2 or 3 minutes.
So my recommendation to you all would be to that extent, certainly I agree with Commissioner Huxley, is just to put them on the county website. I think they are subject to misunderstanding, potentially. And I did want to, in fact, I promised County Accountant Louise Kallstrom that I would give her a chance to comment on this question. So before I speak further, I better give her chance. Go ahead, Louise.
Louise Kallstrom, County Accountant. The question of having them on the website is the county posts the official financial records of the audited financials on the website, but these are working papers that could be changed, misinterpreted. They're just working papers. So to put working papers on the website that have errors and things in them, I think is misleading and should not be posted to the website. And in the same sense, giving those out to the budget committee members with no explanations and no discussions of what's in those financials reports is also could be misleading to them. And I think that having a forum where we actually talk to a budget committee member, in that if we had a finance committee consisting of the county administrator and myself, one board member and one budget committee member, where the budget committee members and the board members rotate out after every 4 months so that everybody gets trained to look at these financials, to discuss informally all the financial aspects of what's going on in the county. I've done many finance committee and they're very fluid and informal, and everybody asks what they need to ask, and then they have somebody there who actually can answer those questions. And I would recommend doing that type of information to the budget committee rather than just giving them access to an audited report that could have errors in it and could be interpreted incorrectly for them to make a decision on. That kind of report is kind of, to me, not good. But that's my take on it.
So would the budget committee members have an opportunity to ask questions if they had questions, if we were to put this out in the public?
If we had a finance committee, they not only would be trained to actually look at and interpret and read those financial reports, and they would also ask any questions that they want on those financial reports and any other financial type activities that are going on in the county during the months that they're serving on the finance committee.
Commissioner Huxley?
They're in some degree similar to what these committee members who are interested in delving into the particulars go through when we're referring back or going through the draft proposed budget too, and all the changes. And anyone that is interested in seeing those for the tool that they are, and they're a great valuable tool. You can learn it on your own. You can ask the door, I'm not speaking for the accountant, but the door with questions for budget committee members is open, always open. I think that's just a way, I think, to delay getting out a good, valuable tool. That's all it is, in my opinion.
Council Huddle?
Well, I've heard county accountant's suggestion of creating a new committee. Again, any committee that advises, a governing body being the Board of Commissioners or the Budget Committee, then is a public body. And if you're going to have one of these things, you're going to need minutes, agenda, all that stuff. My role,
not necessarily county council. If it's directed by the administrator, is not a public meeting. It's a departmental type work meeting.
Well, if it advises a governing body, regardless of who chairs it,
it's not advising. Body. It is giving information to.
Oh, okay. Well, I think that's a subtle nuance, but regardless, I'm responsible for putting this on the board agenda today, and it's because I was at the meeting where the board directed staff to provide the budget committee members with these documents. That was shared with the finance department, and then there was a response that this would be a super burdensome and reams of paper and things like that. Now I'm hearing different, that it's just because it's preliminary information and subject to change and could be misleading. But again, it seems like we're really overcomplicating this, over discussing it. They're public documents. There's a link to them for county employees to see. We can make that link for the public. If it's being shared with county employees and it's misleading or erroneous or incomplete, why are we doing that? I'm just trying to figure out what the real issue with this is. But in the meantime, to me, it's between board and staff, and to see if this information, the board direction, should be shared or should be posted on the link. And then basically what will happen is anyone who has questions can call the county accountant and get those questions answered, whether they're budget committee members, board of commissioners, public, staff, what have you. So I don't know. Those are some options, but I would suggest against creating another committee. That's just my only suggestion there.
Commissioner Huxley?
I second the additional committee, and that could absolutely be construed or interpreted as another public body, recommending things to a public body, but let's not get bogged down there. It wouldn't be providing a link, because the link would be to the county drive.
Oh, okay.
Via virtual or otherwise. It would just be posting that PDF document, that public record, on the county website, period. And I think it's a good step for more financial transparency.
So what is your opinion on all of this, Council Huddle?
Well, again, these are public records already. Commissioner Huxley, the board has already directed, for the record, the board already directed staff to share this with the budget committee members. And it's now to see, and staff has had some objections to that, and it's for the board to resolve those objections. The objections I saw involved costly reproduction of paper documents, and what we're talking about here was that it was a request to email them. But in the meantime, again, posting the documents on the website seems like it would be quick, easy, affordable, and then the budget committee members could look at them or not, and then anyone could ask questions. They wouldn't have to go to some committee to get an answer, any of that stuff. So I just, again, I'm county council, I'm legal. It's legal to do what is being proposed, posting this document to the website. But the reason I'm kind of in between is because in John Hitt's absence, I was doing the administrator stuff when this, issues arose, and I thought we got to get this back to the board to get it sussed out. So when you ask me, what my opinion is, really what's the board's will here, in my opinion.
Mr. Boyce?
Madam Chair, it just seems like we want to complicate this. We get it on the website, it's free, it's easy. No, I don't want any more committees, because it also tends to bring some suspicion to. Remember last April we had this, where we had 3 budget committee members and no warning, and so I just think those kind of things need to be dashed quickly, and keeping the open through the website, and we have a good system there now. So that's my preference, certainly.
Okay, any other discussion? So do we have a motion?
I would motion to put the public records that we're talking about, the revenue and expense reports and balance sheets that are created on a monthly basis on the county finance page would be the logical to place those monthly records on that page. That would be the logical location for me.
Just a question, if I may, to clarify Commissioner Huxley's motion. Do we do a monthly balance sheet?
It's posted at the same time as the revenue expenditure.
Okay.
And I assume that's
Yes,
not.
I never look at that.
Commissioner Boyce?
I assume that's not a lot of it work for you, additional work.
Yes and no. I mean, putting balance sheet information that is not audited in any way, shape, or form on the website for people to ask questions about is it sounds like it's going to spend a lot of my time trying to explain to them why you have to add across funds, or you have to do this, or you have to do that to get a good picture. And then what are they going to be requesting to see bank reconciliations to prove that those, I mean, to me, balance sheet does not give any information to the budget committee at all.
So,
and balance sheets usually in government accounting are annual type of reports in any sense.
people love to be critical before they get all the information. So putting it out prematurely is not a lack of public transparency. So I would, based on that, I just don't think we need any action. We just need to support you and be very, very diligent during the budget season coming quite soon.
I understand that a lot of people think that balance sheets and income statements on a monthly basis are extremely important, and they are for people who are reviewing to make sure things are where they're supposed to be. But a government entity is not the same as a corporation, and you don't really get the same kind of information as people who are used to reading corporate balance sheets and income statements. Like I said, the balance sheet for a government entity is basically an annual report, and that annual report is your audit report that you get annually. To look at a balance sheet on a monthly basis, except for to make sure that your cash accounts balance to your bank reconciliations, is, I don't understand what you would get out of that.
I don't see a purpose.
I don't see a purpose in that one.
Commissioner Huxley, you had a comment?
I think there was a fabricated excuse, for lack of a different term, on the accountant's part as far as all the questions that would come in. You know, here we have the interim county administrator says there's a monthly balance sheet. I don't buy that. I would say that certainly that would not have the value that the revenue and expense report has, and that you know, I'll back off a little bit, although they are both public records, and anyone who wants them has a right to have them. Anyone, any citizen. To say that let's just at this point make it the revenue and expense reports, but that those need to be online.
And so the revenue expense reports aren't as detailed, correct?
Well, they're basically to month to date and year to date on what the approved budget was.
And where we stand.
That hasn't used them internally here, I would encourage you to do so. They're a valuable tool.
Okay, so you're changing your motion just a tad. So you want to restate that?
Restate. Let's amend or revise the motion to place the monthly revenue and expense electronic public records online. I would say the logical location would be the finance department, and to have those put online monthly for access by the public.
And I'd like to make a comment about that.
Sure.
I cannot guarantee when those are posted because of staff maybe being out for either the information we need to finish the journal entries for the month end, or my particular staff who might be out on medical or vacation. Sometimes that those reports do not get put on the website for, instead of like about the middle of the following month, it could be the end of that month and possibly the beginning of the next month. They're just not always that timely. It depends on our staffing and what's going on in our department.
Commissioner Huxley?
The inference was not that it ever was on, and they have gone from, typically it's a month or so after the fact.
Well,
Okay.
usually we try to get them out within 2 weeks. It just depends on when we get all of everything done.
Typically they've been, in some cases where we've been short, they've been longer than that.
Yes.
And what goes there is that there's an email that comes from finance. It goes to each
that they are
department
posted.
head, or I'm not sure who, the whole
It goes to everybody
list
and says that they're posted.
of recipients. And if there were a question after that, if further delays as far as actually putting them on the website, then I would defer that back to the Board of Commissioner office, because they get the notice, and you take the 2 minutes, which is 2 to 3 minutes that would be required to post it on the website.
I'm
if
just
that
saying
were
that
an issue.
if we post them, and you might get complaints that they went there 2 weeks after the month ended and it still wasn't there. It may not be there, and it just depends on what's going on in our department and other departments that have to provide us with the information in order to close the month.
And there could be even a note to that effect. The time varies.
just
It's
put a
approximately
disclaimer.
approximately a month after the actual period. That would answer 99% of
Commissioner Boyce?
the issues.
Sorry if I was too quick there, Madam Chair, Commissioner Huxley. I don't want to make more work for her. It just seems stressful and unnecessary. And, we've come full circle today through the minute process. We're talking about the auditors. We're not passing any audits. So the public knows that we are, we're doing our proper diligence there to have full disclosure, of course, all the time. And if somebody really needs information, now that Staff Jesuit has a little more time freed up, that we've gone to the minimum amount of legal requirements on the minutes, he can send an email to you from John Doe or Jane Doe that says they need this balance sheet or balance report, or and it gets done. But is there a demand here for the public?
I've never
we
had
spend this much time on this today?
I've never had anybody
Thank
ask
you.
for monthly reports.
I don't want to have any unnecessary work, Madam Chair. Just
Commissioner Huxley?
Okay. If it's going to be an issue with the time, which is ridiculous, as Commissioner Boyce says, to physically take the 2 or 3 minutes to put it online.
I think what he's talking about, not that time, but the time that I would have to spend answering questions and doing that.
I think we deal with that if we ever have to deal with it. I say, if there's a 2 or 3 minute time issue in the accounting department, which I don't believe would be the case, then I would defer it and have the direction to the Board of Commissioner office, who would know about it at the same time, to take the 2 or 3 minutes to place it online. They need to be placed online.
Commissioner Boyce?
thank you again, Madam Chair. Would you like to open up this meeting to where we can discuss variations of ridiculous activity? I'll be glad to participate. That's where we need to go.
Okay, we had a motion on the floor. Do we have a second? I'll second it. I think we've had lots of discussion on the issue. Is there any other discussion? Okay, call for the question.
Aye.
Aye.
No.
Okay.
Can I make one more comment?
Sure.
To me, having a finance committee is a training experience for the board to really understand the finances of the county. And I have found it invaluable for training board members on looking at and reading reports and knowing what's going on in the county financially. And it also gives me a chance to have a monthly meeting with the administrator to give them that kind of information too, and to involve a budget committee member. I think it would be an extremely beneficial type committee that if as long as it's not a public meeting, because the public meeting involves agendas and posting and
You know what,
minutes.
how about this? I think what you're talking about would be invaluable. How about having a workshop on going through some of these reports and stuff? I'd like to be part of that.
I think it would be better if we just had a monthly meeting where one of you rotates in and out so everybody gets trained on it, and everybody on the budget committee gets trained on it. I just think that having a monthly meeting is has been, in my experience, very beneficial. I think Administrator Hitt has had that same experience. So I just would really like to explore that possibility. I talked about it last year when we didn't have an administrator, and I actually would like having that kind of a structure where we can have a place to train and get information to individual board members about what we do financially in the county.
Commissioner Huxley, you had something to say?
I think, well, to your suggestion as for workshop, and I say this because given the comments that I've heard from even talking with county council this morning as far as what was the revenue and expense report. Your comments the same to a degree on the balance sheet. Interim Administrator Hitt's comments, I think, put the balance sheet subject aside for discussion, that the I think workshop as far as what actually is the revenue and expense report and how valuable it can be, I think that would be a great subject for a workshop.
And I agree with that, but I also think that I would like to think that Administrator Hitt and I having a finance committee would also be beneficial.
Well, at this point in time, I think a good start would be a workshop, and then after that, we could talk about a committee.
Yeah, agree.
Commissioner Boyce? What?
Didn't you raise your hand, sir?
I did, but I withdrew it. It sounds like you had reached a decision on steps forward, so I'm ready.
Okay.
Not in.
Moving on. Did you have anything else?
Oh, just two other things real quick, Madam Chair and Commissioners. One is we did get a bid to upgrade our wireless public safety communication system. Sheriff's, well, a lot of people besides the sheriff are on that system. And as you may recall from the workshop I think we had in December, I believe it was, that it was suggested we approach this on a phase basis with a microlink backbone, it's also called, be addressed first, since that one is the portion that's seemingly the most urgent. So we got an approximate bid, not a final bid, but approximate bid on that from Day Wireless of $684,000, including installation. They could do it as early as, potentially, they're not positive of this, as next summer or summer-fall time frame. So at any rate, that's just FYI. They do provide some financing, corporate financing, which would be an option to obviously spread these payments out. They estimate the life of the microwave backlink to be 10 to 15 years. So we could potentially spread this out with financing through them up to 10 years or any time, basically 2 to 10 years.
What rate?
About 4.5 currently.
Okay.
Not the greatest rate, but so anyway, that's just FYI.
Huxley?
Oh, to the subject, the day that the individual, I don't remember his name, was here from Day Wireless, he committed to get us, and then that was followed up with Doug Robbins at a later time. He said, well, they're still working on it.
Well,
So
I reminded them of that. We had a meeting yesterday, and they recommitted to providing a formal response to you. The informal response was that the current satellites that would be available to use are not dedicated, cannot be dedicated, or at least that was the statement they made. And would, if there were an emergency, very quickly be consumed with just random people getting into the system. And so that for the emergency responders then might not have circuits available to them because there is not that lock or that exclusive use ability on the, currently at least, in the current satellite availability. Now, I'm paraphrasing. They used a lot more complex terms, and I may have in the process of trying to paraphrase their statement, mischaracterized it, but he did commit to you, Commissioner Huxley, and I mentioned you specifically, as well as the rest of the board, to get back with you with
Just
us.
with more than just,
Yeah,
you know,
agreed.
speculate, because clearly from a financial priority standpoint, this is their priority number one.
Oh,
to sell the
absolutely.
county a system.
Yep, that is correct.
Number something lower than one
Yes.
is to look at the possibility that there actually may be, and it's coming. It
is coming, and they agreed with that.
You know, for
They agreed with
satellite
that.
technology dedicated to law enforcement. We have dedicated to, you know, high government.
Yeah, U.S. military and so on.
Absolutely.
Yep.
So the technology's
Yep.
there.
Yep.
And it's far, far, far superior to, you know, physical repeaters, physical domes, physical towers, and it's here. So thank you.
I would agree.
So would you say putting out $684,000 at this time would be a good or a bad idea, knowing that this technology is available?
Well, it's not really available currently.
Right.
Yeah. So their argument, I think, and again, I'm going to paraphrase much more detailed information they gave at this meeting, but again, they're supposed to give a more detailed report to all of you, is that in the meantime, until that is available, and they, I don't think, speculated as to how far out they thought that would become available, but I think, statement would be, well, this backbone microwave link is failing right now. It could fail basically totally or to such a degree, particularly in an emergency situation where it became practically unusable, or at least for a period of time. So it's a question of, if there's an emergency, well, I mean, even on a day-to-day basis, of course, it's used consistently by all sorts of agencies every day. Every hour of every day. So I guess the argument would be that your need to make that work and work reliable is now. Satellite technology is 2 years, 5 years, whatever, into the future. In the meantime, I think the argument would be we can't just let this go.
We can't just patch it a bit like a roof, or?
They would say no, but, you know, I mean, Commissioner Huxley's correct. They have a very vested interest in, you know, selling and maintaining as much of their product as they can. No question.
Commissioner Huxley?
Again, my point from the get-go, back when I first raised it, is for my knowledge too, and education. What is the state of that technology?
I agree, and that was made clear at the meeting.
Okay.
And the other one is there is a relevant somewhat to Commissioner Boyce's comments earlier in the meeting. There is a Chetco Bar Fire Economic Impact Study proposal that is being funded primarily through state and I think really exclusively through state and federal dollars. It's being proposed to be done by Eco Northwest. And so I think one of the things that study is supposed to encompass is also how to get the forest recovering as quickly as possible. What is the best methods to do that? And its impact on lumber production in the meantime, and how best to address those losses of lumber production in the future by expanding diversification of the economy. So I think it will be, I think the time frame here, and I haven't read this, I just got it actually during the lunch hour, but I think that I think the goal, as I recall in prior discussions on this, was to have this economic impact analysis done over the course of the next 4 or 5 months. So hopefully we'll have that in hand in order to help fortify our cases in the future of getting more support from the federal government in fire prevention, for reforestation, and potentially, I'm not sure whether we'll get in time, but potentially even harvesting of damaged timber. So hopefully that'll get us at least partway down the road here.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Madam Chair.
Madam Chair?
Yes.
Just arrived, Carlos Priestley from Sutter Coast
Yeah,
Hospital.
I see that.
Glad to have you here.
Okay, moving on to commissioner updates. Myself, we talked about the letter and decided to continue that to the next meeting. So I have no other comments. I think I've commented enough today. Commissioner Huxley, do you have any comments?
I would just comment to Mr. Priestley. What I said was honestly what I knew, you know, at the time when I spoke with you. Okay. And I don't know if you've heard, did you watch any of this online as far as our...
No, I've been running 2 meetings.
Oh, okay, okay. But, so the document that didn't exist mysteriously showed up the first thing this morning.
The wrong one was put on the agenda, so we're postponing
So I made
it.
a point, you know, that I'm sorry that, you know, because when I spoke with you, it wasn't, it didn't exist. And therefore I didn't think there was any purpose, you know, when you're coming or discussing things because there was no document to discuss. That document was provided to us, and maybe if it wouldn't be out of line if we could at least let him
Get him a copy?
get him a
Sure.
copy for sure.
Sure, no problem.
So
I
that
gave
you
my
know
copy
what
up
did
already,
come up
so-
at the meeting, but no decision
Oh, I
was
might
made.
have a copy.
But I was a...
It will be, but I'd say, you know, so it will probably come under supplemental materials, or if, as I explained to you on the site, if you supplemental would come under that word more on the meeting in minutes. So I would hope that by tomorrow, that document would also be online.
Just for the record, Mr. Priestley, I was opposed to the letter. I can talk to you about that at some point in time if you like.
So,
To make sure that I heard you correctly, it sounds as if you're going to address the letter at your next meeting.
Yes.
I've handed him the copy that I received, and I explained to him that it is a draft,
Exactly.
and that you guys will be, you know, it's a work in progress.
Just to
That's a
clarify,
draft, yeah.
that would be March 21st, just to clarify.
Thank you. I appreciate
Okay.
you taking the time to interrupt the proceedings and let me know.
thank you.
Quite all
Okay.
right.
Commissioner Huxley, do you have any commissioner reports?
I don't. I have one thing that I'll just, let me see, I have some copies too, just to get it into the record. This is another letter to the editor that doesn't appear to be published of mine. So that's what was sent. This would be 3 copies for Commissioner Gold, Commissioner Boyce, and County Council Huddle. And this would be the master of John. I'll just leave that here for you, okay? It's the same copy other than it's in color. And those are my comments. It's just a letter to the editor.
Commissioner Boyce?
Thank you, Madam Chair. First thing, very happy about the progress we made on the minutes, and I'm going to be a little more diligent to follow that and see. So that I don't remember months ago where we really discussed a shorter version. I could have missed that, or maybe it was vague. One thing I think that's really important here on the Budget Committee, the latest appointment, forgive me if I say his name incorrectly, was Ostrowski, is that correct?
I think sounds reasonable.
Sounds good enough.
Sounds
Close enough.
reasonable.
I will apologize, and I won't make that mistake again if it is incorrect. We were responsible to appoint someone from the Port Orford area, and in the meeting, I asked you, Commissioner Gold, if, in fact, this person was from Port Orford, and in research that was given to me by one of our constituents, he, in fact, is in the Gold Beach School District. He is not in Port Orford. And I don't know how hard and fast that rule is, but I don't want to let Port Orford be overlooked again, and I think we have a responsibility just to at least review this. I'm not opposed to him, but we did have 3 candidates, 2 others that were no question from Port Orford. Jim Auburn and Ed Conyers. So we need to do some research here. Thank you.
Commissioner Huxley?
I don't know location-wise, but I know I had had a conversation with County Council on that at the point where we continued week after week to get the word out that we had an opening, and we hadn't had any responses. And I said, how critical is it? And he said, there's nothing, no legal requirement. That would be an internal thing when you have South, Central, or North County. And we'd also talked about Planning Commission members. Okay. But again, it wasn't at that point trying to circumvent anybody. It was trying to say, okay, what if we haven't received any, and then all of a sudden we received, I think, three came in, and then we made a decision.
Madam Chair,
that's all I'm aware of.
Commissioner
Okay,
Boyd?
well, that's we're breaking tradition, and that further divides the county. I know it's only 3% of the vote up there, but it's 4%, whatever it is, and so I think that we need to revisit this and strictly pick somebody from the Port Orford area and maintain that tradition, because we don't need any hard feelings. We really don't. I think we made a mistake there, and I think we need to own up to that.
Any other comments?
So how are we going to proceed? Or should we bring it up again, or are we burying it, or not to put you on the spot, because I don't know what the proper procedure would be here, but.
Well, I would say if you want to bring it up again, put it as an agenda item on the next meeting.
Okay, thank you. I'm going to read some.
Huxley, just one other.
We could look just further into when they came in, because all I remember is meeting after meeting, bringing it up. We were missing it on the notices. It wasn't getting out, and that nobody had responded or nobody had replied, and then all of a sudden.
Yeah, well, I do recall, and maybe John Jesuit remembers better, but we got 3 in fairly rapid fire, didn't we, John? Yeah.
And then in that process of time, I had talked, to county council.
Right.
I don't think that was the specific purpose of the conversation, but it morphed or something into that, where it's not is it a requirement or not, and what's not a legal requirement for sure.
Did you have something else?
Yes, still working with Roadmaster Christensen on, we have a lot of cars over there in the lot not used that I think we could raise a little money, and you're aware of that. That's one. Citizens Park Advisory Committee, I hope that we can make some progress on that. I've been turned down twice now, and I see no logical reason not to pursue that, and I think we would have some very good people in this community that would love to participate. And related to that, Madam Chair, is the Forest Service with their budgets. They have several parks, 2 or 3 closed down within our county that, in view of the Checo Bar fire and the loss we took, I think they could donate those back. So I'm doing some behind-the-scenes work on that, and I think that our Parks Committee has some capacity, certainly, I think you would agree, to manage these parks. Obviously, it would take some money to get them back online. That's a hurdle that we could at least do an evaluation on. Also, Chief Brazil, Harbor Fire Chief, we're going to need to reach out to him. He's had some issues I think have been pretty legitimate, and just some issues on firemen going to the hospitals, etc. And so he is just he is a diligent worker, and so I'll be, he's got several documents here that I've been keeping handy that. Just be advised, I think that's something that we can make some progress on and help him in some of his issues. And I think that's all I have.
Okay, good. We are going to be closing this, not adjourning. We're going to take a 5-minute break, and then we're going to get back to an executive session under 192.660. A, to consider the employment of a public officer, employee, staff member, or individual agent. Under Section F, to consider information or records that are exempt by law from public inspection. And Section H, to consult with counsel concerning the legal rights and duties of a public body with regard to current litigation or litigation likely to be filed. And under Section 2E, the real property transaction.
Do you anticipate any public motions after executive session?
I'm not sure at this time, so I can't say for sure.
There may be one. It depends though, but it would be about. It wouldn't be very specific. It would be directing staff to proceed, as discussed with the matter of, this, that, or the other.
Go home and get your lunch.
Oh, don't jinx it.
Okay, so we'll be back here at 1/4 after.